Hello, everybody. Let's see if this actually worked out. Did it? Not quite. I can see me. Well, my cap's still working. Let me see if I can input you. I think perhaps I didn't do this. Where are you? There you are. Guess what?
It pipes me in as an individual
There you are.
video and audio source, doesn't it?
It does indeed. Then I didn't turn it on, so now I have. You know what I'm also going to do? I'm just going to get rid of these cam blocks tonight. We're just gonna do stuff, man.
We're doing it live. We're doing it live. Streamers streaming professional.
Absolutely. We unfortunately your CC does like they're not working.
I'll be right back.
Right? It's fine. You'll be there when you pop back in. So, for those of you who haven't guessed, we are here to talk more about our blood drive for Equality Texas. Hopefully the music isn't too loud. Just turn that down a little bit more. Where is it? And yeah, we're just spending the rest of the night raising money for trans folks in Texas. And once we get our friend Sam back, we are going to continue talking about that. Specifically, I wanted wait until he comes back in here.
I'm back.
Oh, hey, and there's your little bits there too.
Is it Ninja that has the built-in CC?
Ninja has the built-in CC. Yep.
Really? We're gonna have to talk about that later. You're gonna have to tell me how to do that.
I can give you the code that the guy who made Ninja gave me, so that it fits properly. Absolutely. Yeah. I am really bad at coding, and that's just the way things are. I'm also gonna go ahead and quickly put up the guest 2 screen because at some point our other guest will be joining us, and I do not want to mess that up as well. So we're just going to go ahead and put that in there. But for right now, Sam, I have done a whole bunch of talking on it that's supposed to be about trans folks, and I'd really like it if you would tell us about yourself and give us maybe a brief overview of your take of what's going on in Texas.
Whew, wow.
Just something simple to start off with. I don't want to...
Yeah, just current political analysis and all that.
Yeah.
Simple stuff. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam. He, they. He, they are my pronouns. My last name isn't he, they. But I am a professional moderator. I mod on Twitch and I mod Discords for pay. Because to me, that's what a professional means. You get paid to do it. What else was I supposed to say? Before the
just a bit about yourself. Bit about what you do. You're a professional mod,
I'm a professional mod. I am an amateur flesh crafter. I like leather. I like making things out of leather. I have dubbed it flesh crafting.
That's the most hardcore way you could get. Yeah.
Exactly. It's very metal. That's very much my brand. But I started modding about 3 years ago. Started with Thamer Sophie. If you've ever heard of Sophie.
I have. Sophie from Mars, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Who has whomst amongst us?
Yes. I started modding for their channel, and she's awesome to mod for. But
she seems like a really cool person in general.
Yeah. I slowly started picking up channels, and I liked it. But then I kind of started getting asked to help with productions. And I have been on so many charity streams in the last year. I'm kind of getting good at it now. So I really enjoy charity streams. They're kind of my thing. I like doing production in the background work. I don't necessarily want to be the face. I would like to be in the background, switching the levers and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
But that's me. How are you?
I'm well. As well as I can be anyway, obviously. Obviously this is something that directly affects someone like me, who is basically cis. But I have family and friends, and like a very dear friend of mine just recently came out, and they've had some trouble with their family, and then this that, and it just kind of hit me like a truck. You know, it's like I can't understand why people have to be so shitty. But I mean, obviously that's the wonders of being a cis white dude. I get to wonder why instead of being like, oh, this is happening to me, isn't it?
At least you recognize that. At least you recognize that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I told you the other night that when I was younger, I was very much wondering who and what I was, and I luckily where I am and where I was had the safety and ability to just kind of suss that out of myself. And even though I'm not exactly sure still, like a lot of people don't get that. They just don't. So especially having this sort of thing happen. And it's not just Texas, by the way. We're focused on Texas now because Abbott's being a dick. But like this is happening.
Let us not forget Florida, the Don't Say Gay law.
Yeah. Like that just has to happen.
That's just open queerphobia, period.
Crazy. But the only
not to use that word.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you not to use the C word?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Wild, ridiculous.
Wild, ridiculous. I gotcha.
Thank you.
No, of course. Sorry about that. I should have. It's a process to weed out the bad words from your vocabulary.
I'm still doing it constantly.
Yeah.
I have such bad habits with language.
I come from Leonard County, and of course, we're. You ever see Letterkenny? The show Letterkenny?
I've heard of it. I've never watched it. It's not my thing.
It's based on where I'm from. So their manner of speaking. And lots of people use the R slur quite a bit there to reference things. And of course, it's very innocuous. But like my family, like my aunt has Down syndrome. So like we have been on that Don't Say the R slur for like ever. And it's just it's a hard thing to make people out with.
It really is. But I think I lost my train of thought. ADHD brain.
Hey, look at
that. Very much so. I have trouble finding folks in my social circles that don't have ADHD, autism, some sort of disability.
It's like we congregate.
It's when I was younger, I called it queer gravity theory. You know how there's a group of kids that before they even know who or what they are, they all kind of glom onto each other, and then they all kind of, oh, you're gay too. Oh, you're gay too. And you're trans. Oh, okay, cool.
Perfect.
That's weird.
Right. Yeah. Strange that. Strange that people who need safety and assurity tend to gather with people who also require and exude safety and assurity. You know.
I had it explained to me like I was 5 years old because that's the way I needed it explained. But like, it's the way that they see the world. It's their perspective. They don't have that cishet normative perspective already. So they all kind of see things the same way and talk about things the same way.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Also, for anyone in chat, my usual viewership is probably a range of folks who may not be aware of some of the terms we're just throwing around. If any of you have a question about that, please feel free to say something in chat, and we will let you know. This is, we're educating today in addition to anything else we're doing, and it helps keep one's brain in the right place to know what we're talking about.
Apologies for the Taco Bell bong. My computer tells me when it's on the hour to keep me on point on my schedule.
Hey, that's cool. That's neat. Man, I'm a whirlwind of chaos. I just let myself get drawn in by something, and then I forget what hour it is. I probably should be using something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly why I put that on the computer. It helps me. It may or may not help others. Your mileage may vary, but it helps me because every time I hear the bong, I'm like, okay, I need to check the time. I need to check where I'm at on my projects. I need to.
Yeah.
And meds. Got to take your meds.
And meds. Don't forget. Take your meds, folks. Very important. Yeah.
That is my little tone for all my notifications.
It's good. I think Jinx uses almost exactly the same one, I think.
My buddy Nix, he has it set for his coffee, or not his coffee, his Etsy store.
Yeah.
So that every time he hears that, then he knows I made a sale. But mine is for everything, so if I keep it close to the mic, he's constantly like checking his phone. It's a cruel joke, but we laugh.
It's so fun. It's so fun.
Mostly I laugh and he just kind of sits there and looks at me.
as the best friends often do. Like, why would you do that?
Because we're
yeah. So at any moment now, we're gonna get a guest from Texas. This is the Montrose Grace Place. They contacted me today and they said, "I'm sorry we didn't see your message beforehand." And I was like, "You know what? Do you want to come on?" And so we're gonna get somebody named Natalie Ferguson, who I believe is the president. Hang on. Yep, President Natalie. At some point, I believe she's going to be coming on and talking about what it is they do there. The drive that we're doing today is for Equality Texas, which is a local-ish organization. Equality itself has many places across the area. One I was finding fairly early on was for Loudoun over in, I think, Virginia. And obviously, I'm certain that they've got local places in places like Florida, obviously, because we've mentioned that there's issues there. And so, but I wanted to also make sure that we highlight a couple of extra local organizations, and Montrose Grace Place is one of those places. I believe, if I... There we go. There's a list of places. ACLU Texas needs almost no introduction. They're there to fight the good fight and all the legal battles. They are not sponsored, even though they're such a gigantic organization. They're not given government dollars, so they rely pretty much entirely on donations, which is what we do here. But they are there specifically for legal purposes. Hello, and I believe this is Natalie.
Hello, Natalie.
Oh, sorry, we're not.
Audio is the final boss of all streaming. Audio is the final boss. I will live by that. I'm telling you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
we
ma'am.
can indeed.
Look at that. I'm a tech wizard.
Beautiful.
It's
let me just make sure that I get your tag up here.
Absolutely.
So your name is Natalie
Ferguson.
Ferguson. Can I ask your pronouns, Natalie?
She, her.
Thank you very much. And where can these fine folks reach you if they wanted to at you on like Twitter or something?
My at is Talia Mirai, Mirai.
Gotcha very much. Okay. Thank you very much.
It's nice to have you to here, Natalie.
Thank you so much.
I clearly, obviously, openly trans. Like you can't miss it. So this whole thing kind of basically ran roughshod over me, and I'm really glad that organizations like yours exist. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do specifically? Because brain.
Yeah, for sure. So, hi, my name's Natalie, she, her, and I'm the board president of Montrose Grace Place in Houston, Texas. And what we are is a twice weekly drop-in center focusing on providing a safe space for home insecure youth ages 13 to 24. And the core of our program is being a safe, affirming, and welcoming space to LGBTQ plus youth. And the majority of the youth that we do serve are LGBTQ plus, and 90% of them are also Black and brown. So I am a queer woman, obviously a Black queer woman. And so there are so many reasons that this organization is really important to me. And what we do is we have bi-weekly sit down meals with the youth. We have like a clothing closet where they can get everything from like hair care supplies to bedding to clothes. We have activities from financial assistance to bingo to coloring book day, just anything that kind of fosters creativity, learning, professional development skills. We just want it to be kind of like a holistic place where youth can come and get whatever they need in that moment, whether it's a bus card or to complain about some terrible thing that they've had happen to them because of their circumstance. So that's about who we are.
That's awesome. People don't ever recognize the serious need for emotional support. Just letting somebody vent and like not giving advice if they don't want it, just sitting and listening. It's so important. It's so important for mental health as physical health, and that's so important. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. I actually started off there 8 years ago as what we call our direct mentors, and those are the volunteers that interact directly with our youth. And one of the things that we learned that I now actually teach future direct mentors in is active/reflective listening, which is all about listening without judgment, listening with the intent of not giving advice or like, oh, I can solve your problem, let me tell you what to do. It is about just giving that space of listening and affirming sympathy and understanding. So I'm like a huge proponent of that, like to the extreme, because if it's one thing we've realized with just everything that is going on now and has been going on is like, we don't know everything. You know, I am wholeheartedly a supporter of trans rights and trans lives, but I know when it's better for me to like be quiet and let other people speak. So that's super important to our youth.
It is. So my first take on all of this is if anyone is shocked by this law, like don't know where it came from, they weren't paying attention. This has been, I believe, was it Arkansas that tried it first? I don't remember. I think it was Arkansas that tried to ban medical services for trans youth. I can't remember, but
it might have been. I know that they're talking about like the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. Back in the day, what was it? Indiana was kind of like one of the states that was leading in the whole conversion therapy thing. So
that was us.
Yeah, can't keep track.
Yeah,
as an outsider, I have heard quite frequently that trying to be safe as a queer person in the States is like playing checkers, because every other state will basically be run by somebody whose whole base wants them to do this sort of stuff.
Well, and it's not even by state sometimes. You can hop city to city and be in the most like safe, affirming neighborhood and then go to the next city and you don't want to stop. You don't want to stop. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how it happens, but it does.
It's true. Even besides like from state to state, it can be city to city as well. I had got real deep in my feelings when all of this came out 2 days ago and went on like a Twitter just rant about it. And I was talking about how despite the fact that this is such big news now in Texas, again, for all the wrong reasons, is becoming like a part of the national news. Within the city of Houston, which is comparatively like a pretty blue county, we've got a lot more programs and organizations that are for LGBTQ youth and people. And so I feel like a lot of outsiders just get this vibe of Texas being super conservative. And like, if you're a queer person in Texas, like, why would you be? Like, there's no way that you could survive there. But, you know, the city of Houston, far more engaging with that community and welcoming. But yeah, sure, you step 30, 40 miles out and like, you better not hold hands with like your same-sex partner in a bar or something like that. So
So one of the things that I am a professional moderator on Twitch. I help a lot of different channels. I do a little bit more than modding on some of them. So I was contacted by a couple of folks trying to figure out charities, and my advice was donate to local and mutual aid groups that have boots on the ground in the state and not overarching like large charities. Is there any that you could like suggest to folks or that you know of that we can like have donos to? Because some of these places don't have a place to donate over the internet, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Sometimes it varies. A lot of mutual aid. I was remembering like kind of adjacently similar, just in regard to like the community at large responding to a need that was going on. Like when we had the freeze in Texas, a lot of people were taking mutual aid for homeless populations, and a lot of that was through like Cash App and Venmo and things like that. Of course, I have to put forward my own organization. I was talking on Twitter about how we actually have a fund specifically for the medical needs of trans youth, and I actually met with our executive director today, and we're thinking about like expanding it beyond just medical needs. Like we had a trans youth come who was like, I'm learning to be a model and I need to take this course and it's $250. The youth is trans. Like, why would we not put forth the money to help them with something that is going to better their life? So we're going to talk about expanding Asia's fund into something that is more of a just like general help mutual aid fund for our trans youth. I know a lot of Houston area places. I know that I'll bring up my Twitter thread. And of course, if people follow me on Twitter, I did post about several. One that we just partnered with is called the Mahogany Project, which is actually Houston's first trans resource center that is really specifically targeted to the Black trans experience. In the United States, the majority of trans people that are being murdered, unfortunately, are not only Black, but Black trans women. And so it's all the more important to have resources that have that intersectionality with race. And so the Mahogany Project has been great. It's been a great partnership with us. So I definitely want to like uplift them. There's also Tony's Place in Houston, which also does similar to what we do in the form of like drop-in centers where youth can get hygiene items and hot meals, showers, coins for getting their laundry done, things like that. Let's see, what are some other ones? Equality Texas, a larger organization, but still doing a lot of stuff in the community. So thank you very much for like doing a stream that benefits them. That's awesome. I think I know there's some on my Twitter that I posted about, and there have been a lot of people sharing a lot of great organizations from like San Antonio to Dallas to Austin to even some places kind of outside of what we consider the blue bubble of Texas.
I just wanted to ask because you're local. I didn't mean to grill you on it. I was just But I'm super curious. I was homeless for about 5 or 6 years as a youth. It was not great. I went to a lot of bad shelters. I know there's a lot of good ones in the world. How does it operate? A youth comes in. Can they come in any day? Do they have to wait for specific days? Time?
So we personally don't have the capacity of being a shelter. And so like our program, for example, runs on Mondays and Thursdays from 6 o'clock to 10 p.m. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of LGBTQ plus centric shelters, meaning ones that are really about like affirming youth who want to be housed with the gender that they most align with or identify as. Or unfortunately, out of shelters that are for homeless youth just don't have policies in place that are protecting youth against discrimination or bullying because they are trans or queer. A lot of them operate differently. We ourselves in Houston are trying to work with and advocate for our youth, working with these organizations to tell them like, hey, you need some better policies in place specifically about the LGBTQ plus youth that you are taking in, because homeless youth are more likely to fall into the range of being LGBTQ plus identifying. And it just doesn't make sense to me to like not realize that and realize that it is often a factor in the reason why a young person, especially one under the age of 18, is homeless and is seeking a shelter outside of a family home or a home with a friend. So
quite literally why I was on the street. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see that a lot. A lot of our kids are children of the system who have aged out and have no resources. A lot of them are couch surfing or on the street because they were thrown out, because they were trans, or because sometimes we even get kids who just like their parents just think that they are. And because of that, it's caused friction in the home and they've had to leave for fear of their own safety.
I don't want to take up too much of your time with my rambling, but I'm really curious about not only this just awful law, but how it affects your organization specifically.
You know, we were talking about that, and we see it much in the way that we saw other disasters, like, because this is a disaster. Like, it literally is a disaster. And fortunately, I'm reading that a lot of protective services systems are just going to be like, nah, we're not abiding by that, because thank the gods, it's not like a set in stone law that the government has to enforce. But we're treating it much in the way that we've treated things like COVID and the freeze that happened here, and Hurricane Harvey, which also affected Houston. Like, it's bad, but we're gonna persevere despite. And much in the way of COVID, the fact that this is gaining so much national attention and it's drawing attention to how, I'm upset about it as a cis woman, but there are people out there who are really going to feel the wrath of this, and we have to protect them. And I find in light of disasters like this is when people are like pouring their heart out in support. I mean, just like from me just going off on Twitter and getting on a rant, like we've had so many donations pouring in just from people like retweeting the link that I put out, and people visiting our Facebook and connecting with us. People are just like, something bad is happening to people who above all like do not deserve it. Like, this is just so undeserved. I want to do something. So we are just like further pushing ourselves out there and reminding people that this is the reason why we've been doing this for now 12 years. And we're just going to keep doing it. We're going to keep kind of taking advantage of the fact that this is a conversation that has been renewed. I mean, it's been how many decades that trans people have been attacked by lawmakers and conservative politicians. This is nothing new. It's just louder. And so we're going to keep doing what we've been doing all this time.
Yep. That's all you can do, honestly.
Yeah.
Jay, I kind of took over your channel.
No, this is perfect because again, this has zero to do with me. I'm just facilitating. That's all I'm doing. You two talk. You need to talk. Like, this is. People like me shouldn't necessarily be talking. We should be sitting down listening. So, especially because I'm all the way up in Canada, and the only thing about our child protective services is that they're taking Indigenous kids, and that's like it's horrible. But like I said, we're here for Texas right now. So, you know.
Well, it's much appreciated. And again, like it's great that so many people from all over and from all different types of walks of life are taking the opportunity to boost this issue. And it says a lot how just egregiously terrible everything about Greg Abbott and what he said was, that like no one's just like, or, some people are, but the majority of people are like, oh, well, that's a valid concern. Like, it's, no matter if you're from Canada or you're from Houston, like I am, it's just like, wow, that's evil.
Right.
So it's again, it's just great that so many people are talking about it.
I believe I read the letter that came attached to the proposal of the law, and it was, to say disgusted is kind of minor for how I felt. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of language in there that I didn't like at all, especially as a trans person.
Yeah, and there's a huge gap between just an ignorance of like not knowing. I've seen a lot of people educating folks online about what is transitioning for kids under the age of 16 or 18 or prepubescent. Like, what does that mean? And a lot of people are just fixating on this, like, this wholly physical aspect of it, whether it's taking medication or getting gender affirming surgeries. Like that's the only thing that they fixate on. But they don't understand that, and I'm sorry, I don't want to like talk out of my lane, but it's so much more. It's using correct pronouns. It's kids being able to have the space to dress as they want, to use the facilities that co-align with their gender identity. Like it is so much more than just they're gonna mutilate children. And so I see a lot of people taking the time to learn and to listen when folks are educating them and saying, hey, this isn't all it is. It's so much more. And most of the things that you're thinking about aren't even things that children that age are going through, or that their parents are trying to like push upon them. So there's that. And then there's just Greg Abbott. And
Right.
just that willfully ignorant, goes against my Christian cis straight values, and I don't even want to take the time to learn. So I'm just going to be an utter jackass about it.
Right.
Yes, a gross jackass, by the way.
Just vile, just absolutely vile. And so that's why I get mad. I get mad for 24 hours. I go off on Twitter. I go cry, and then I'm just like, okay, I got to do something. I just gotta do something. So yeah.
I believe that was the exact process I went through when all of this happened. I was like, oh, this is really bad. I need to process. I spent one day just kind of like disassociating around the house. I don't even remember most of that day. The next day I was like, okay, let's get some shit done.
Mm-hmm.
It's very odd for me to say that this directly affects me because I'm not used to that. I'm white, so like I'm not used to things being directly targeted at me. I'm not sure if you have heard what Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene said on the Alex Jones show.
What? Oh, that's all you had to say were those two names, and I can imagine the sort of nonsense she spouted.
She openly advocated for violence against trans people.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
Yep. So I really want to be angry about this, but to be perfectly honest, I'm just terrified. This is the first step towards legislating people like me out of existence without saying it. Because I've told people this so many times. This isn't, part of it is about the kids, but this isn't really about the kids. This is about putting small laws in place. It'll be this, and then another little law, and another little law. And they're going to make transitioning in any way so hard that 90% of people can't do it. They won't have the time, the energy, or the money. And they'll be able to say, no, you have a path to transition. You must only jump through the hoops. But they're flaming hoops and they're 10 foot off the ground. Who can do this? And it's just a way to slowly strangle us out of being able to be ourselves. Right. That's it. And it scares me the number of people it's going to get hurt or worse.
Yeah, much as I love Houston and I've talked up a lot of our organizations, we're not perfect in the sense that we are completely impervious to disinformation. I think it was about like 6 or 7 years ago-ish that like the bathroom bills across many southern states were like a big deal. And here in Houston, we had the HERO initiative, which was an intent to protect transgender people and allow them to use the facilities that they wanted, whether it's like in a gym or a restroom. It was to protect them from being, I think LGBTQ people at large, protect them from being discriminated by businesses and things like that. It was an anti-discrimination initiative on the local level. And conservatives went hard into that whole rhetoric of, and it aligns because it's all about protecting children. It was all about protecting kids, and this can't happen because your children will be, your women, they'll be in the bathroom with people that want to hurt them. Like it was just, they put forth that rhetoric so hard and so artfully targeted and worded in a way that people who had no knowledge of what it meant to be transgender and how like everybody just wants to pee in a clean bathroom. Like that is a universal right. Like it's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, pee in a clean bathroom. Like that's what you want to do.
To me, and it's been pointed out by thousands way smarter than I am, that the focus is always on trans women. Trans masc folks like me, they don't really care. They're not worried about me being in the men's bathroom.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true.
And it just like I still use the women's facilities. I'm non-binary. I don't care which bathroom I use, but I still use the women's bathroom because of my body type, because I'm terrified to go in the men's, not because I'm afraid some man will hurt me, but because I'm afraid of my gender being questioned.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and I know, I mean, I've heard from my non-binary and trans masc friends who also talk about like their own fears about going into a bathroom, and whereas like if they decide to use a women's bathroom, they might not get as much like feedback, we'll say, or hostility. It's still a terrible thing to experience that they can't, like, that they feel uncomfortable about it, and it's like a resort that they have to do. And so with the Hero Initiative, unfortunately, because of all of that, like just terrible fear mongering the conservatives did, it didn't pass. And it really, I don't want to believe that my city at large is that hateful. I think it is just, obviously, if it's one thing we've seen in the past 5 years, it is so easy to spread disinformation, and it is so easy to scare people. And it put into the right hands, it just becomes a deadly tool to continue to endanger people who are vulnerable. Like, right. They're not the enemies or the they're not the boogeyman, of course, that people try and paint them as. Like, they are more vulnerable than anybody would try and paint as like a victim of something like that. So don't let me get on my soapbox.
No, this is for your soapbox.
Exactly what this is for, is for you to soapbox as loud and proud as you want.
I was expecting a little bit of a comment about the idea that this is also extra terrible because the people who vote for this don't have as many barriers for voting for this sort of thing.
That's true. Texas, Houston specifically, after we implemented things like drive-through voting and expanded voting hours. Some places here were 24 hours. Like, that was a big initiative here in Houston. And with the last, or in Texas rather, and with the last election, like, we saw record turnouts. And so ever since then, conservatives again have just been hard at work trying to scale back on all of these new technologies and techniques to encourage people to vote. And you're right, the people that will be unable to vote, that don't come in to vote, are probably the people that would vote for anti-discrimination laws, or would vote against any kind of bill trying to target trans people. And it's a targeted attack, and it's very smart. Like, admittedly, it is very smart, because it's not just we're going to attack trans people specifically, we're going to attack voters, and we're going to attack the institution of voting. And because we know that Black and brown people in certain areas who tend to skew more to the left, they are around fewer voting polls, or they're working longer hours. So it's going to be difficult for them to get to the polls by 7 p.m. So we're going to make it even harder for them.
Of course.
It really is just like a targeted attack of many calculated steps.
The thing I fear the most is a thing I have learned from COVID. The people who start the disinformation, they're like villains in an action movie. They truly are, because they summon the darkness, and then it gets way beyond their power, and they get swept aside because it turns into its own monster. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
the way the vaccine disinformation has become its own monster. There's nobody in the lead of that movement. It's just a lot of disinformation spread by a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm afraid of with all this bullshit of these transgender laws. And Florida's law, the Don't Say Gay law, is so openly queer-phobic. I honestly don't understand how it got passed, other than it's Florida.
You got me. It's Florida is what I thought too when I heard that, and I was like, "Where is this happening?" Oh, Florida. And like, that's not a diss on the people of Florida. It is more so on the diss of just, again, this culture of cis heteronormativity and Christian politics and family values that is so ingrained in a lot of not just Southern culture, but Southern politics. And it's such an old institution, and it's not at all surprising why it's easy to pass bills like that, or to see why there would be so much support around it. But I know of so many LGBTQ focused and trans specifically focused organizations and groups in Florida that are doing work to combat that. And so just like Texas, much as our state and local governments might be conservative in some places, you're seeing more of a rise and a louder voice for groups and people and activism initiatives that are fighting against that kind of stuff. So it doesn't surprise me. And when I see that kind of stuff happen, I always try and find, like, I Google, Trans Resources Florida or queer groups Florida, just to see, like, and reassure myself, okay, this is happening. But even besides all that, like, somebody's going to be helping the people that are most affected by this.
Well, it never surprises me that the worst circumstances bring out the best people, honestly.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And again, it's like, this is terrible. We're all upset. It's super stressful. Like, and I keep thinking the fact that we're number one, it's Black History Month. This just ruined Black History Month. Like, we need a redo, just like last year. And number two, like, we're still in a global pandemic, and we're still dealing with just like the absolute global trauma that we have experienced from that. And so to deal with all of that on top of this just like poop Sunday of terribleness is awful, but it's bringing out just like the best of people and the best of my community and the folks that I engage with online. So I let myself feel bad, and I will probably feel bad later, but like when I see those donations roll in and like we got the email from y'all, it was just like, okay, something to hold on to.
Yeah, if I had more time, I certainly would have messaged a little sooner, had something a little bit nicer set up for you.
Oh no, this is great. I'm super glad that I was able to make it. We had terrible traffic, and I was like in a rush because this is super important to me, and I wanted to make sure that I thanked you all for your support and just kind of boosting us and inviting me. So this was great.
I was tasked with vetting a lot of the organizations, because the first thing I thought was disasters bring out the best people and the worst people, the scammers, the frauders. So I went through and I scrubbed, and I was so impressed, as someone who's lived in poverty and been homeless, that I don't look at the same things other people look at. I'm not looking at the people in the picture. I'm looking at your facilities. I'm reading your mission statement. I'm reading your backstories. I'm looking at what's the turnover rate of your board of directors, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very impressed with your organization. Your board of directors is diverse and a lot of femme presenting people, which makes me super happy. So I just wanted to say I'm really impressed.
Thank you. It's funny you should say that. We just had a huge board meeting where we were talking about like what we want to do as board members. I've only been president since last June or July, and a lot of the board members are new, and so we're taking the opportunity to really dissect like what do we do for not just the youth that we serve, but our partners who bring services into our program, our donors, our supporters, the volunteers that everything is built upon. We have 2 staff people, and it is a league of volunteers that come and cook for our kids and organize our closet. We're having a Black Hair Care drive this month, and volunteers have just come out in full support of us and keep delivering us things. And so we took the time to really think about what do we want to do and what is going to maybe fill in some of the holes of opportunities that we haven't taken to boost up the stories of our youth and the mission of why we are an LGBTQ focused program, as well as I love the term culturally competent, which means being focused on the fact that our youth are predominantly Black and brown. And what does that mean for our policies, and what does that mean for what we're doing? So yeah, it means a lot for you to see that, and just like what our board looks like, because it's very much a aware decision of ours.
I did have one question, and you are fully allowed to tell me you're not going to answer it. Do you have any trans people on your board of directors?
We do.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we have trans and non-binary.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And we actually put out a call for new board members, and we specifically said like we are looking for trans, non-binary people, especially Black and brown.
That's awesome.
That is. It's very good.
So I'm guessing that you solely run on donations and volunteers?
We are actually largely grant funded, and I think maybe not even government grant funded, because it's very hard to get government grant funding, especially for small organizations. So a lot of our money comes from grants. But as far as our like day-to-day of getting again hygiene items for our clothing closet, or to-go boxes, keeping we always have like a police officer on staff just to kind of like watch out and just be there as a presence. But we are actually moving to turn that position into not having a police officer there, but a caseworker. We want somebody who's going to focus on if a youth starts a fight or gets aggressive or gets angry. We don't want somebody who's just going to like yell at them and take them to jail potentially. I mean, we've had some great police officers who have really been great mentors to our youth, but we see that there's more of importance to have somebody who is trained like in mental health, de-escalating type procedures and things, as opposed to a police officer. It's 2 completely different vibes. And
that makes me so happy to hear.
Yeah, and so like our donations go to those kinds of things. It goes to, as I said, like Asia's Fund, hiring programs like Writers in the Schools, and we're about to start a financial literacy class. So the donations go to a lot of kind of like our day-to-day operations for our youth program. So it's awesome that we've had so much come in through the last couple of days, because it just means we can think about how we can continue to stretch those dollars into doing something new. 2021 and 2020 were the first years, like in our 12-year run, that we were able to do mutual aid. So it was great to be able to just give our youth money during COVID for whatever they needed. And that was grant funded, but the fact that we still had donations coming in to cover like operations and things like that was super helpful.
That's really awesome. It really does give me hope. I'm still terrified. I have very quietly been in tears over this for 2 days. The only thing that has kept me afloat are the wonderful friends that I have. Most of them are cis, and still, a lot of them were checking on me. Just didn't need to know, didn't need to be told. They just checked on me. And then a lot of them went out and did something active. They ran a charity. They put out links. They tried to educate. Like, I've got good friends. I just wanted to take a moment to brag about my friends. But do you plan on expanding like days, services, or anything like that anytime soon?
That's one thing that we're discussing among the board with what's next. For the first 10, 11 years of operation, we only ran 1 day a week. And so it was just recently we're able to expand to 2, which seems very small, maybe if you compare it to some like 24-hour shelters and things like that. But for us, that was such a growth potential to be able to serve twice the amount of meals, twice the amount of youth. It's really helped us grow in a way that we had just never had the opportunity for. Like, we're a small grassroots organization with a lot of like very small community ties and kind of not as large funding, I'll say. We're not bringing in the big bucks like Equality Texas or HRC or things like that, because we are a small grassroots community activism type of organization. But we really want to think about what's next for us. Is it expanding services to more times a week, which I think it is kind of going in that way, as opposed to like we're renting a space right now. We could get our own building, but that's really expensive. Would it possibly be just as beneficial to be able to have our youth in 3 or 4 times a week as opposed to just 2? So we're continuing to grow. We just started being able to do case management. So we're actually putting youth into our homeless management system where they can get access to other places for things like getting their birth certificate. We're looking into providing trans youth the ability to change their gender marker on their IDs and things like that. Connecting to them to the housing list and those kinds of resources outside of our scope, but now we can put them in the system to get. So we're definitely expanding like on the program side, what I think is just as important, leading up to that like expansion of days of operation, and then eventually the actual physical space that we're in.
That's fantastic. It's a really good financial plan.
Grassroots organizations are some of the most well-run places I think I have ever seen. They're always on top of their shit so much more than other organizations I've known. Yeah, they have to be.
We have to, because we know that it's like, if this is the $5 that we're getting for this week, we got to make it stretch. Like, we got to have that $5 make a meal. We got to have it like buy condoms, get socks, pay our security. Like, we know how to stretch money. And so our executive director, Courtney Sellers, I have to shout her out if she ever sees this. Like, she is phenomenal, and she's just grown the organization so fast in just the 2-3 years that she's been in that position.
I did a brief back and forth with her email just before she put me in touch with you. So yeah,
she's great. She's cool.
I'm really encouraged by organizations like yours. It gives me I'm no less terrified, but it does give me hope.
I think if you can find more moments between the terror to feel hope, and if they're a little bit longer because you know that there are organizations out there doing things, like, I feel like that's worth it. Like, and especially, I can't even imagine what it feels like to be trans or gender nonconforming and something like this going on. So I know the terror, the amounts of terror are even longer. But yeah, just injecting those little bits of hope in between. It's like a form of self-care. That's why sometimes I tell people, like, if you feel incapable or just unsure of what to do, like, retweet something, Google something, give $5. Like, $5 for us buys a youth a bus card, and that bus card can get them to work and get them to a paycheck that they need to pay their rent. Like, don't diminish the small things you do to amplify, or the small donations that you give, because it truly goes like a very long way. And so I wholeheartedly believe that in times of feeling just absolutely incapable of making change, look to your small grassroots community organizations. Like those are the people, and this is not to diminish the larger organizations, but these are people who are really making direct, I'll say, impact and change in the lives of individuals, as opposed to, say, broader policy changes.
Well, and it has to start from the ground up. It just has to. That's the way real change happens. That's honestly it. That's the way we got into this situation. It started at the ground level of people just being willfully ignorant and hateful, and it grew. So we got to come in with the good, cut all that down, and grow the good. It's got to start at the ground level. So
yeah. And even these large organizations started off as small ones. They started off, a lot of them started off as maybe foundations, but a lot of them were grassroots. A lot of them were small. And being that we've gotten access to more resources than ever before, I have no idea how big we're going to get. But again, growth for us is being able to get that second night. It's being able to serve more meals or give out vaccines, afford somebody coming to do vaccines, or mutual aid, or STD testing, or like our condom bowl is never empty. Like we have a condom dispenser in our closet, like, and it's never empty now because of the partnerships that we've been able to make with people who would donate those condoms, or money that we can use to go and buy them. So like it's a ripple effect of good, and the small things really do amount to large changes in the end.
I'm so used to church programs as opposed to actual healthy organizations that when you say things like for a condom bowl and all of that, I'm like, lucky, like not lucky, but like, I'm really glad that that's a thing. I like the church programs here in Indiana, in the very rural part where I am, they'll feed you, they'll clothe you, and then they'll preach to you. That's it. That's all they do.
Yeah. I mean, it's Texas, so we definitely have those. And it's funny, we actually operate out of a Lutheran church, and the core of the organization was the like leadership of ministry there. And so a lot of our kitchen crews now are still these Lutheran churches who have been with us for the longest. But and I don't know much about the Lutheran faith, but they are definitely seem a lot of more progressive, at least in some different groups of them. And so we often get like, are you guys secular? Like, are you Lutheran? And we're really, no, we're secular. But the Lutheran churches that we've engaged with are definitely, they make it known that they are allies. Like one of them just sold their building and decided that they were going to divide the profits up among their favorite organizations. So we got $50,000 like from this group that had been with us for 7 years, like cooking meals for us and our youth in the kitchen. So, but yeah, we know of a lot of organizations who our youth will go to, and they will tell us like, we don't want to go to this because we got to sit through a sermon before they even break out the chicken or bring out the water. And so we know how much, even outside of a religious kind of aspect, there is a lot of tone policing and respectability politics among serving youth. You know, they've got to act a certain way. Please and thank you. You know,
sir,
they have to be straight. Yeah, sir, ma'am, present as straight. Like, don't have your cleavage showing. Like, there are a lot of organizations who still adhere to those kind of just archaic conservative policies. And so that's why we still, again, we focus on being an affirming space, which means whoever or however our youth present beyond gender or sexuality, like who they are. You know, if you come in with booty shorts and a tank top on, we love you. You know, come on in.
Yep. And I really get tired of the narrative of how spoiled the youth is, because I'm seeing people who are getting the things I needed when I was young. I didn't figure out I was trans until I was 34. I've always been a late bloomer.
High five. Came out as queer like 2 years ago when I was 34.
Exactly.
34, the magic age of, oh, I was this all along.
The first time I even heard of what a transgender person was on CSI, and it was so alien a concept, and they did it so poorly that
Of course.
it was a fantasy character to me. It was werewolves and vampires, to be crude. It didn't really exist. And then my best friend at the time came out as trans to me when we were 19. And I didn't really understand it. But from then I started learning about it. And I did that thing that so many trans people do. I'm the best ally to the trans community. I'm just so glad. I just think y'all are neat. And
I did that too with the queer community. I was like, I'm here for all my queer friends. And it's like, the queer is in the house.
In my friend group, we often say, if you're here, there's a good reason. We're just waiting for you to show it. You have ADHD. You've got some kind of trauma. Honey, let it out. That's why you're here.
It's true. I was joking earlier. I was talking about some friends about like, oh, only it was in relation to like queer comics, like specifically BL, yaoi, those kinds of things. And somebody made the comment like, only straight women like this. And I was like, all of the straight women I knew that were into this kind of thing are all queer or trans. Like, there ain't a straight person in this house. But like, where are they? It's like, oh, all the straights are gone. What happened to them? Oh, we're all queer friends now. We're all like, all my friends are queer and trans.
Yep. And what a good group to have, right?
Truly it is. I sometimes I was like, I grew up in a very conservative Catholic household. And I always talk about, despite the fact that Black people in large vote Democrat and seem progressive in a lot of certain social issues, there's still a lot of conservatism in the Black community. And so there are times when I step out of kind of like my queer and Black and transgender friend circles that are like more aligned, and then I go back into my childhood like very conservative Black, or I'm in nonprofit, which still weirdly enough often very conservative. And so when I step back into that world, it's always like, oh, I forgot this was a thing. Let me just go back inside the house.
Right. I get that. I totally get that. I had a thought and then it ran away from me and my brain went the other direction. But I'm curious because it is not being, pardon the parlance, woke, to recognize that 90% of your kids, your youths, are Black and brown. And I'm white, but I'm trans. So this affects me, but it doesn't affect me as much as it does others. And I'd really like to better understand how I can basically be a good ally to my own community. I'm not asking you to speak out of your lane, but like, is there anything that you have noticed that allies could learn a little bit more about because specifically most of your kids are Black and brown? Any misconceptions that you would love to correct?
Oh gosh. Yeah. You know, we often have this kind of like, we often joke about the fact that we onboard new volunteers maybe 4 or 5 times a year. And usually by and large, 20%, 30% actually continue the training and become direct mentors to our youth. And some of them will always say this line when they don't show up, either after the training, after they've actually gone through a youth night, or their first youth night as a volunteer, and they don't come back. And they'll send an email and it says something like, this just wasn't the opportunity that I think I was looking for. And it's such kind of polite language for, oh, you don't serve sad gay white kids. You serve boisterous, energetic, queer and trans Black and brown youth. And so this more so speaks to what people think of when they think of like the narrative of the disowned gay child or the disowned transgender child. So many stories about gay youth that experience violence, or trans youth that are bullied at school, are still very centric on acceptable whiteness. You know, it's the sad, it's like the Sarah McLachlan puppy. And I don't mean to say this as disparaging, but it's like there's definitely a visual that people are more likely to feel sympathetic towards when we're talking about trans and queer youth. And that is definitely a white youth, definitely not a black or a brown one, because you will see far more conversation about these legitimately terrible stories about young gay men murdered, or a trans child bullied out of serving with a gendered sports team that they want to be a part of. And it is terrible, but you won't see as many stories about the numerous Black trans women that are killed, you know, constantly. If you follow HRC or any trans organization on Facebook, they always report when a trans woman was killed. In the span of less than 1 year, we lost 2 young trans women of our own at MGP, both of who were Black. And I knew them. And like, when you then reflect on people not wanting to help out or turning away from a volunteer opportunity because of their own race-centric discomforts with the youth that we serve, it's so frustrating, because allyship can definitely be centered in a way that excludes certain groups. You know, you can be a trans advocate, but still adhere to a white supremacist policy of ignoring Black and brown kids. You can champion gay causes. You know, you can be all about gay marriage, but who are you leaving out? Like, what's your asterisk on your advocacy? I think that's what I always challenge people with. Like, is there any asterisk next to what you believe is right for others outside of your experience? And so I have no idea if that answered your question, but I think that's what I want people to think about predominantly when they think about advocacy outside of kind of their lane or their immediate demographic circle is, what are your own biases? We all have them. Like, no one can throw the first stone on that. We all have them, but recognizing them and thinking about how they infer our activism or our giving is really important. If you consider yourself somebody who supports trans creators or queer creators, like, what does that bookshelf look like? Is it all names of only white people? Is it only white voices? Is it only cis voices? Is it only able-bodied voices? Like, I think that's something that's largely ignored when we're having these kinds of conversations, is that aspect of disability, because how diverse is your diversity, truly?
Right.
Yeah, I have no idea if I answered your question, but
You absolutely did. You absolutely did.
Okay. So that's kind of like what I really encourage people to think about, because I think that varying, who are you following on Twitter? What blogs are you reading? What media are you consuming? Who is it made by? Who's writing the blogs? It's just as important as, like, you know, why would I read some article about what's good for trans children by a cisgender person? You know, if you can recognize that as probably not the voice you're supposed to be listening to, you can apply that to other things as well.
Right. And it's not to say that cis people can't advocate for trans people, but I had it explained to me so succinctly once, and I'll never be able to recreate what they said, but basically you should be out there repeating the words of trans people, not making up your own. You should be out there mirroring them, not being the advocate. You should be the bullhorn, not the speaker, is basically what they told me. And I was like, yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Pardon the Taco Bell bong.
That's
My-
amazing.
My computer goes off every hour to keep me on my schedule.
That's very smart. I love that.
ADHD brain, I'll hyper focus and the whole day will be gone.
I love it that it legit does sound like the Taco Bell bong. Like, really.
I didn't notice it first. It's called Big Ben is the sound clip, and my best friend was like, "Ooh, Taco Bell bong." I was like, I can't unhear that now.
Big Ben secretly a Taco Bell. No, we confirmed it.
I mean, you know where my subconscious was because I love Taco Bell.
It's keeping you on track because it makes you hungry. That's what's going on.
Yeah, it's true.
I am food motivated.
Same.
So I'm
I was
very.
about to say something, but I forgot. So let's continue.
Sorry.
I started thinking about quesadillas.
Oh, yep, does it to me every time. So I'm a little curious about what kinds of specific services you have is besides just the community get together kind of things, like counseling, what have you.
We have a lot of partnerships with local Houston organizations, from healthcare facilities to other LGBTQ aligned organizations. And so, like I said, we have an activity every youth night, which could be financial literacy planning, which we're about to embark on with a pretty big national bank chain that's been like really great for us. We have people in the community that want to do bingo. Like, it is so important for kids, for youth to just have fun. Like, if you think about being in a situation where you're probably stressed out a lot, or maybe you're not in a place where you can sit down and just enjoy like playing on your phone or playing a game with somebody else. Like, we have community people who come in and do like bingo nights or like casino nights where the youth can earn tickets to get like all sorts of prizes. We have done what else? We have STD testing and HIV testing with one of our local LGBTQ centric medical facilities here in Houston. Let's see. We partnered with a organization called Say Her Name that came and did like a Juneteenth activity outside of our youth nights on a Saturday, where youth were able to come and get clothing. They got hair care, like actual hairstylists to come and braid their hair and help them wash their hair. We have organizations come in and do donation drives for us, whether it's for clothes or, like I said, during February, we do our Black Hair Care drive. And so we'll have partners facilitate drives and bring in things for us. Let's see, what else? We do so much now. It's so hard to keep track of. And we just made a list of it too, that of course I didn't have on my other screen.
Of course.
But yeah, we do a lot of like personal development. We partner with University of Houston's mental health department to regularly bring in a not a therapist themselves, but somebody who can sign the youth up for therapy appointments. So a lot of the times youth cannot either get to a place potentially to receive services, or they just don't know about it. A lot of the time it's just that they don't know about it. It's so difficult to, number one, find a place with electricity, find a place where you can connect to Wi-Fi, and then figure out what's a vetted organization to go to for mental health services. So we bring those people in so they can basically pre-register or pre-screen the youth and then help them get to whatever facilities or mental health organizations that they need to get to. So we definitely try and connect youth with as many community resources as we can.
That's awesome. I've been asked. I didn't even intend to come on here and be the interviewer. It's Jay's channel, but he's being kind right now. So I don't want to like overstep you. Is there anything that you would like to say specifically? Anything you want to soapbox about for a minute?
Do you want to interview us?
Yeah, I do. Like I didn't have any time to check out your channel. We vetted you as well because when Courtney forwarded, she was like, "Oh, you're into gaming. You know about streaming. You should do this." And I was like, "Who is this person?" And so of course we got on Twitch. And just like we're always like, you can tell a person by their Twitters. So we definitely looked you up and stuff. So I just wanted to like and know more about y'all and what's your like personal, obviously we have talked about like what's your personal attachment to all of this, but like what is your kind of, besides just like you're obviously a good person, but what are your own personal kind of stake and feelings about this?
Well, typically, I'm a little bit of a homeless and a disability advocate in my own town. Not a whole lot, admittedly. I can't do very much. I don't look it, but I've got a lot of disabilities that stop me from doing things like going outside. And like I've been stuck in my house for the last 2 years. My doctor's like, you can't go outside. You catch this, you're dead. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's great. I'll just stay inside then. And luckily, because I have this channel, I was able to do something, right? That was not regular work. So I've been very useful there. But I have been surrounded by people who were either very poor or queer or of a minority that like I was telling Sam before we all came on here that I grew up in Lanark County in Canada, which is an extremely white conservative country, the countryside rural area. And so whenever a minority moved into our town, it was quite obvious that they were not being treated well, you know, in very small ways. And so I was able to clue into that when I was young. And so I've always just kind of like had this thing rattling on my brain that things aren't cool and we should like maybe do something when we can. And so when this thing happened in Texas, two days ago, when it blew up all of our phones, I have a friend who just came out as trans, and they have not been having a good time. And I just could not stop thinking about them. And I was like, we're more or less safe up here in Canada for that sort of thing right now. When I was growing up, we had a huge conservative government. This would have absolutely been an issue that the conservatives would have jumped all over. But what if my friend was living in Texas right now? Right? What if I grew up in Texas and I didn't have the luxury of thinking about who and what I am? It's terrifying. And I mean, I get to feel angry. Sam, you were talking a little bit ago where you don't have the luxury of being angry. You're just scared. Right?
It's self-preservation. I can't be angry right now because I'm in danger.
Right. So for those of us who get the luxury of being angry, we should do something with it if we can. I have a stream. Not very big, but I put a big show on every month, and this just so happened to show up just before my big show. This is what I can do.
That's awesome. Like I had a very similar experience with just that kind of moment of, I don't want to say realization, but just that kind of like call to action. As I said, I just came out as queer recently, like old baby queer. And while my parents fostered philanthropy and volunteering and giving in our family very young, I've always volunteered. I've always loved volunteering. And I had, again, that whole, like, I'm an ally. Like, I'm just here supporting all of my queer friends. Definitely straight though. You know, I'm an art major. I had tons of queer friends in all spectrums of the word. And so I was driving to the grocery store one day, and I'm always like ashamed to admit this, but I'm just going to be honest. Like, I saw an obviously young, homeless possibly, but obviously on the street woman with a dog, and it was a German Shepherd. And I grew up with German Shepherds, and like I was very much affected by the fact that it was a young woman out there by herself, but it was also like, oh my God, a young woman with a cute dog, like, oh, that's even sadder. And so I was like, and then here I go to the grocery store, like looking for organic, whatever bullshit. And so I'm like, I'm going to put a pack together and bring it to her. And I just intended to like give it to her because I didn't want to give her like weird vibes of like, let me preach to you. I just didn't want to be weird about it.
Mm-hmm.
But she just like started talking to me, and I had put a pack of baby wipes in there because I had recently learned, and this is something that not a lot of people do, like donate baby wipes for people that cannot access showers on the regular. Like baby wipes are just like the, bathroom wipes, the wet wipes. Those are gold. We like always ask for those because they're wonderful. And she was just like, oh my gosh, this is great. So she like fed her dog, and then she's like wiping herself down with the baby wipes. And like, we just had a conversation for like an hour just about her experiences, like hopping trains, which I didn't even think was still a thing in like, what was that, 2012, 13? Like people still, there's trains that still do things.
Bless our outdated train system.
Yeah. I know. And so it was just like, we just had this long conversation just about her experiences and things that she had to learn as a young woman who had come all the way from California on a train, like hopping trains with her dog. And it was really impactful then. But then the very next day I got on Facebook, and a friend of mine was like, Montrose Grace Place is looking for volunteers. We serve homeless LGBTQ youth. And I was like, yeah, that's a sign, like, can't ignore that. And so that was very much like my kind of call to arms, so to speak, of honing in my service, my idea of service, and really focusing on championing this organization and really being a part of it. And I went from being like a direct mentor to leading youth nights to then serving on the board to now board president. And so I hope it's obviously like how much of just a champion and steward of this organization that I am, because it's continued to grow with me and be a part of my growth as going from an ally to, oh, hey, I'm queer, to being even more passionate and active in this community that is now my own.
We do sometimes tend to find our communities before we find ourselves.
Ain't that the truth? But yeah, Jay, that's so admirable to take that step beyond feeling bad for someone or knowing that something is wrong. And that's not to say that everyone needs to take the same sort of actions or make it a big focus of their life to do something, because maybe you don't know how, or maybe you can't for whatever reasons. But it's so admirable to know where your privileges lie and know when you have a voice, no matter what size it is, and use your platform and opportunities to give other people the chance to talk or to be there for your friends.
I got it's weird to say lucky, because like I was homeless for a very brief period myself, and I have always been extremely poor. But that's the thing that I point to when someone asks how I have the perspective that I have, right? Which of course doesn't mean that I necessarily have all the perspectives that I need. You were talking a little earlier about how everyone has their asterisks, right? And growing up white from a rural Canadian conservative area, like absolutely, I was not always the best ally. It took a bit of time, and it like a whole bunch of people just like me have embarrassing stories of the things we did when we thought we were helping. And if there's anything I can do while I'm getting better at it, for instance, sitting here and listening to this amazing stuff you've been talking about, I absolutely will. Doesn't cost me anything.
As far as I'm concerned, a good ally never stops learning. If you feel like you've reached a level of, I know what I need to know, I can be an ally now, you're not a good ally. You're just not.
And I also think a good ally never or doesn't continue to harp on what they didn't do or how bad they were in the past. Kind of tangentially, I was reading a guide that the wife of one of my non-binary friends posted, and it was all about like how to properly use pronouns. And one of the slides was like, if you mess up, correct yourself and move forward. Don't continue with the whole like, oh, I'm so sorry, or this is just so hard for me. Like you start to get more into like this self-flagellating, like, oh, I've been such a terrible ally, you know. Oh, I was terrible to Black people in the past. I laughed at a racist joke. Like, oh, you know, okay, don't throw yourself on your own sword there too much. Like, we've all done bad. We've all messed up.
Yeah.
You know, no one is born woke. You know,
right?
Not even me as a Black person. Like the idea of wokeness and awareness transcends just being a part of like a minority community or a marginalized group. Like we're all learning. No one is all of the things, and even when you are all of the things, you can still have your biases. And so it's important to acknowledge them and realize like, wow, I was really messed up, or that was just a terrible kind of perception to have. And then you use that to move forward, like always facing forward as far as your activism or just your outlook. You know, there's nothing wrong with kind of telling your story or telling your journey of where you come from, but there does come a time where like just certain times where people really just talk about like, oh my gosh, I was just so terrible to Black people. And now I've like got hashtag BLM in my Twitter bio. And it's like, congrats, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for overcoming your racism.
Right. One thing I've learned rather recently is I said how earlier I was just so angry about it, and I get to be angry because of who I am and where I am, right? But one thing I learned in the last couple of years alone, just during the pandemic, I guess, is that like so what if I'm angry? Like that doesn't help anybody, right? I mean, I get to be angry, yes, and I should use that to do things, but just sitting there being visibly angry about something doesn't help anybody. Right?
Yeah.
And so like
attach your anger to like, even if you're just like blowing up on Twitter, like make your 20 tweet rant, and at the end, like, here's the actions, like here's the places to donate.
Yeah, here's your links.
Yeah.
Links. Yeah.
That call to action is so important. Because otherwise you're just stirring the pot and letting it continue to boil, which is not helpful for anybody. It's in fact making things worse.
Yeah.
Or denying the opportunity to present like, here's more about what's going on from people who are far more affected by it than I am.
That is one thing I wish I could get through the heads of a lot of cis people. Yes, it's atrocious. Yes, it's a human rights violation. It's an atrocity. Being out there and vocal about your anger, you're centering yourself. You're getting the spotlight on you. You can be angry. Do something with it besides talk about it. Like, the trans community, we already know. It's directed at us, so we know. We get it. You don't have to keep telling us. Go help. And I understand. And people need to vent. And people need to hear how disgusting it is. Like, I have no problem with people venting about how angry they are. But there are some people out there that are a little too angry for who and what they are. I wish I could erase that behavior.
Yeah, but you start to wonder, like, what are you angry about? Like, are you angry that it's happening to other people? Or are you angry that, like,
it's not happening to you?
Yeah, it's not happening to you, or you're having to hear about it again. Much more of a, oh, here we go again. I'm angry because, like, you know, this is terrible and I have to hear about it.
And I'm going to take another minute to brag on my friends. That's one thing that I love about my friend group. The ones that checked in on me and took care of me went out and did something. They went out and did something. Even if it was just tweeting about it, retweeting trans voices, they went out and did it. My best friend asked me if I was okay one time, sent me digital hugs, and then started asking me questions about trans charities. And I was in such a fugue state. I didn't really understand what was going on until he showed me he's a glass etcher. He made little tokens for charity, and he etched up 40 of them and said free shipping if you donate $10. If you buy one for $10, it goes straight to Equality Texas. Sold all 40 of them.
Aww.
I didn't realize what he had done completely until the next day. And I was like, you've literally already done the thing.
So what was his link again? I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting.
Oh, his channel or his Etsy store?
His Etsy store would be great, as long as he's still doing stuff.
Oh yeah, I can find it real quick.
If you can drop that in chat, that'd be great. I've been trying to keep up with the links so far.
Absolutely. But I want to hear you talk more, Natalie. I really do. I seriously do, because it's giving me hope that you're still going forward, because I have been stuck in this panic state, and it gives me hope that there are people out there who have moved past that part and are already leading the charge. So I know that when I finally get myself together, I will have an avenue to continue doing that. So it really does give me hope.
Yeah. And I think that they're, especially when you are a part of the group that is hurting the most at the moment. That's something that I learned a lot in light of like what happened to Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, and just like this continuous slew of like Black people being murdered by police. I had to kind of like do this audit of how I was processing things, and like always feeling like I needed to be engaged. I needed to go to the marches. I needed to be at the protest. Like I need to do this. I need to do that. And then at some point I was like, I'm Black. I don't have to do shit but feel upset, and be angry and be scared and like be honest about my feelings. Like I gave myself more space to not have to be on like my activist, put on my activist hat or be on my soapbox on Twitter. Like sometimes I was like, y'all, I just can't. Like I'm laying on the couch. I'm playing, I think I was like super into Breath of the Wild or something there. I'm just gonna play this. And I don't want to watch any Black trauma porn, like movies, no sad slave narratives. Like I chose how I process things, but also chose like when and if I processed. Because legit, sometimes my processing was just crying and playing video games and eating, like food therapy, legit my go-to. So I do think there's an importance in being kinder to ourselves than we think that we are. And of course it's always good to come out of your fugue states when you can, or like do something that's a little bit more positive or constructive, because you definitely can go down a self-destructive or just nihilist path of like nothing's ever going to get better. This is going to be the same thing. They're always going to be attacking us. Like this is always going to happen. It is definitely important to find what helps you come out of that, and that can
very much. I'm very weak to the nothing's ever going to get better mindset. I fall into that a lot.
Yeah. And I don't think there's any one way to get out of that except for recognizing where you find your hope and in what. And that can be activism or giving, or your friend group that is positive for you, or playing video games or D&D. Like, not to get into like a segue that is super my soapbox, but this is like why diversity in media is so important. Like to be able to have the escapism of like, finding a happy story about a Black person that happens to be like in a fantasy setting, or, seeking out happy stories about something that you can kind of like project on because of your own identity. So I've definitely learned to not feel bad about feeling bad, and and taking time to think about like what is going to help me get out of this. It might not be the thing that everyone says, oh, donate some money or get active. That'll fix everything. Because then you'll be on the front lines and you'll be helping towards like changing what's wrong. Doesn't always help for some people because maybe you're not able to donate, or maybe you're not able to volunteer. So then like, what do you do? So yeah, that's kind of like my, like, not advice per se, but just like my perspective on it is just like feel bad. It's okay. Like, this sucks. Like, everything about now sucks. Like, we're in a pandemic. This shit's happening. Other shit's happening. Like, this all sucks. And it's okay to say it sucks. And just, yeah.
Yeah.
Wednesday, when all of this kind of came out, I was like, it hit me really, really hard. And I could recognize that I was having one of those. I have a major depressive disorder, and I was having a depressive state, or a depressive episode, pardon. I could recognize it. So I thought if I just focused on doing something, that I could like push myself out of it. And it didn't work. It didn't work. And I came in the next day, and like I said, I'm a professional moderator on Twitch and on Discord. I don't know where it came from. It felt just like it came out of left field, but I was like, I'm taking the rest of the week off, everybody. I need time. And all I did was take yesterday off. That's it. I started again today. I was modding again today, but I needed that one day to sit and be quiet and be sad and be scared. I had to allow myself to feel the terror, or it was going to sit in the back of my head for way longer. So I just had to sit there and cry and be sad and scared.
Mm-hmm.
But the next day, I was just ready. I was ready to go because I allowed myself that time to process.
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch on something you said because, and I don't want to speak out of my lane, but as a white person, I did not recognize this trauma porn epidemic kind of thing, this phenomenon, until one day on Twitter, I just rolled by a tweet, and I don't remember what the tweet said, but it had the words Black joy in it. And it just hit me as a beautiful phrase, but the video was like, it was so heartwarming that I like teared up. It was this woman. She had just got a job. She walked out very professionally into the parking lot, looked around, and just started dancing because she needed this job so bad. And she just, like, you could tell this wasn't a dance. This was just her joy being expressed. And I was like, oh, I understand now. We don't ever see Black joy. We don't ever see Black joy, ever. And that's a fucking tragedy, because I now recognize when they do it to trans people. And I'm like, there's trans joy everywhere. Being trans, figuring out you're trans is fucking awesome. Pardon my French. But
we're a mature channel. It's okay.
There's so much joy, and it I feel like only focusing on the trauma makes the cause weaker, because once the trauma stops existing in the minds of people, we stop existing, because that's all they associate with us with. So I can, like, more joy, please. More joy, please. More joy. More joy.
Yeah. Something that has been going on for a very long time in media specifically, and mostly like in movies, is a celebration of sad and angry Black people. Narratives, I'll say specifically. If you look at the history of Black people who have won major like Academy Awards, I guess that's the Oscars, it's like Halle Berry in Monsters Ball, where she's like an abusive parent, Denzel Washington in Training Day, a corrupted cop. I think, what's her name? Not Viola Davis. I think one of the women from the movie The Help, which was about like black servitude in the South. I think
Olivia something.
Yes. I'm so bad at like actors and stuff. I don't know anything about celebrity culture. But if you look back, like a lot of recognition goes to movies that are just about the struggle. And so much about what we see in media about Black people and the news about Black people is all about the struggle. Like, that's what gets non-Black people's attention, because, you know, it's hip to be woke now. And it has been for a while. Like, we're fighting for equality, we're fighting for opportunities and things like that. And that in itself can be joy, but there's so much focus on the lack of representation, or you know, we have to learn about sad stories in history. And that's why we're going to talk about this historical movie about, you know, granted, it's great to learn about these characters or people in history like MLK, you know, Selma. I heard Selma was a great movie. I will probably never watch it, just because like I know the narrative, and not to say that that story isn't uplifting, because parts of it is, but it still just represents for me like it has to be about sad Black history or sad Black trauma. And sadly, even Black filmmakers or storytellers have fallen into that. Like Jordan Peele, I have not been able to get into any of his movies because they are all, for the most part, except for I think maybe Us, to some extent, most of them are about racism or putting, and I'm a huge horror fan. I love horror movies, but like horror in the context of racial trauma sucks, because racism is already scary. Like, can we just not get like haunted? Like, can I just be in a haunted house and like the ghost doesn't like call me a slur or something, you know? Like, can we just take like the racial element out of it? Like, you know, even I was watching the recent like Leatherface, a Chainsaw Massacre movie, which as a Texan, like love, I stand chainsaw, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But like even that had some racial elements to it. I'm just like, do we have to? Like,
you have to.
Do really? We have to? And so to the broader conversation, it is so important to see Black people just beyond our fight and our struggle. Like, yes, that's important. But we are so much more than that. Like, I got happy. We were rushing to get back here, my partner and I, and like we were in the bookstore, and a Black father and his daughter were like looking at manga, and I was just like, oh, like that. And so that was like my moment of Black joy, because I remembered being like a young kid in the 90s when manga and anime were like super new, and you know, you found like maybe 20-30 titles of Tokyo Pop on a shelf. Like, I was ordering manga on eBay and things like that. And so to see like a young Black girl have access to comics and things like that, and her father is like encouraging her, because my parents weren't all about that. Like, that was my moment of Black joy. And I was just like amidst all of the stuff that's been going on, I was like, oh, yes. Like,
find that serotonin and hold it tight.
Right.
Yeah. And
all of the dopamine.
Yes. I saw a lot of trans people that I follow on Twitter were like making trans joy tweet threads, you know, share your trans joy. And I think that's kind of to tie back what we were talking to, like about finding your moments of hope, or finding things that help you feel better, or bring you at least for like a little bit out of your state of depression or just like hopelessness. Seek out other people's joy. Like, you don't have your own joy, get you some secondhand joy. Like,
store-bought is fine.
Yeah, store-bought is fine.
It's funny that you say that, because quite literally, I believe it was Tuesday or something, my best friend Nix put out a tweet of what brought you joy today. What craft are you doing? What's your project that you're passionate about right now? And he later tweeted, I'm just serotonin farming here, right?
Mhm.
I didn't do this for anybody else. This is for me to bring me joy. I want to see other people's joy.
I have one serotonin molecule, and he's scared, and he needs friends. Mhm.
Yes. So yeah, that's one of the best parts about community, because you can find all of the things there. You can find where you can put the trauma, but you can also find joy, and you can find just like that ennui of just I just want to exist. I don't really want to be happy right now. I don't want to be sad. I just want to exist. Leave me alone. And like, good communities have a place for all of those moods, for one person and for individual people. And I'm a big fan of community, if you can't tell.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I love the Twitter community, and I have a Patreon that's like inactive, but we have a Discord, and just having like those little pockets of places where like I know I can pop into this channel that I've designated for just like stupid memes, and I can go and look at that, or
Yeah.
I can, go to my side Twitter where I've taken off anybody that has posted about like current events and stuff. Like, it's just all like, we'll say saucy pictures, saucy art. We'll just leave it at that.
Right.
Like, it's just like art that I like to look at. It's art.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's art.
But it's just like things that like, this brings me joy. Like, this, like Marie Kondo, this sparks joy. I go to my, where are the spaces that spark joy? And I'm so bad at doom scrolling, like, especially with like the international stuff that's going on. I've been doom scrolling a lot, but both my partner and I called in sick today, or / took off. And so like we went to the bookstore, we went out to brunch, and I'm like, I'm going to try and stay off my phone today. And we're going to play like, God, what are we playing? Horizon, the first one.
Yeah.
I am the world's slowest gamer. So I'm just playing Zero Dawn, and everyone's like, we're on to the new one that's called like whatever West. And I'm like, hey guys, I just started. So, finding those pockets of joy and just respite. We had a seminar at work that was about dealing with philanthropic fatigue, specifically because I work in nonprofit as well. And it was talking about just like the stress that the pandemic and working from home and being on Zooms and all of this has caused us. And the woman that facilitated said, self-care for the betterment of your mental health is so much more than like, I'm taking a mental health day, so I have to have the whole day off where I'm doing nothing. Like, self-care can be tiny things repeated throughout the day, rather. That's the thing. Like, you got to do like little bits of self-care, like little nuggets, like little treats. You can have a little bit of self-care as a treat kind of thing. And if you do that repeatedly throughout the day, it's just as impactful as taking a full day, which you might not be able to do because of work or duties or whatever. So, going to the bookstore, self-care.
I think one of the things that able-bodied people really need to understand is self-care isn't always fun. Sometimes self-care really sucks. I have to do my meds. There are days I have to make myself brush my teeth and take a shower. Do I always feel better after I do it? Yes, every time. But there are days where my brain says, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. That's too much work. And I have to make myself. Self-care isn't always pleasant, but if it's good self-care, it always has good results. If that makes sense.
Really true.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to interject here real quick, we've got Ricardo, the CEO of Equality Texas, ready to jump in at some point. Natalie, I don't want you to leave necessarily. If you would like you like to stay on? And so you can have a chat with your peer here, and
yeah, for sure.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. Apparently, the Equality Texas folks are jumping around talking to people right now. So that's like, whenever they jump in, I want to keep this conversation going. I just needed to interject very quickly and send them that way, so they don't like jump in here and everyone goes, another person. Yeah. Let's do. No, I don't need that one. Inside baseball. I am moving all my stuff around.
I have to be honest. Like, I read the letter that came attached to the law, and I read sort of the overview of the law. Do you have any insight on it being local that, like, maybe I don't know from everything I've read on Twitter? Like, is it... I think I'm trying to ask, how is it being received by the population? Like...
I'm not super clued into like local news and stuff like that. As far as like the communities, as far as other organizations and things like that, it's definitely just we're speaking out against it. Here's what we're doing to combat it, in the sense of we're going to always recognize and support trans people. A lot of teachers are speaking out about it. A lot of parents that I know. So I feel like, and again, it might just because of my own echo chamber, but a lot of my community members are definitely speaking out about it. A lot of, I guess it's lawyers that work for these children's family department services. They are like, we are going to defend our groups when they say, no, we're not going to do this, and you try and like legally sue them or bring charges against them. Like, we will defend them for their decision to rebuke this. So, and I'm going to keep it real. Like, I don't even know if it necessarily is a law. I know he made like some kind of like decree. Like, is it just some kind of empty, like, I'm going to start enforcing this? Like, I say that this is something that has to be enforced. I don't know how enforceable it actually is. It's certainly scary because there are a lot of people on his team who can make it law, who can send it through, the Texas Senate. So, but I think there is going to be a lot of fight against it. And I'm hoping that will, number one, help put forward maybe to a federal level, like that this is unconstitutional and you can't do this. So I'm hoping that this will help with a move to, in a legal, finite sense, stop him from doing anything. But by and large, like the communities around us as an organization and myself as a person, like definitely speaking out against it.
I'm really hoping that it is just an extremely vocal minority in Texas and across the US that are advocating for this so hard. And I'm really hoping that most people think this is as atrocious as it is, but I'm unfortunately far more afraid that most people don't really know what's going on and they don't really care. And I'm going to keep screaming about it. I'm going to keep screaming about it until everyone is annoyed with me, and then I'm going to scream about it some more. Like, I understand that it can be fought against. I understand that there is still a fight to be had, but that it has gotten this far, that a state governor,
Yep.
state governor can just openly say these things and be like propped up. Like, his party isn't coming to him and saying, hey, you're making us look bad, you need to stop. Like, they're supporting him.
Mm-hmm.
And the Don't Say Gay law, I'm not sure if you heard, but it did pass today. It passed as a law.
Yeah.
Right. So it is the amount of ground they have gotten so far that worries me the most, because so many people are still willfully ignorant of the situation. That's it. I'm sorry. I just wanted to ramble for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always astounded by the lack of tools that the general public have to rein in their own elected officials. Like past elections, we've got nothing. There's lots of people who put around petitions or anything like that, like these things that grassroots activism usually does. Petitions, mobilization, that sort of stuff. And it's all great. But if a politician really doesn't want to do anything about what we're yelling about, there's nothing stopping them. And that, I think, at the very base root, that has to change. Because if we can't do something about our elected officials after the fact that we've elected them, or they've been elected in general, sorry, not we, because most of the times redlining and stuff like that makes it so that we didn't actually elect these people, then, like, what are we doing here? This isn't democracy. This is temporary dictatorship. So
yeah, and I think this would actually, the kind of legality behind it would actually be a great question to pose to Equality Texas, because I was just looking at the letter again, and I'm not familiar with, like, he refers to it as an OAG opinion, and then it's got like a number, but he does say Texas law is imposing this requirement now on DFPS. So I don't know exactly what an official opinion is. Like, what does that mean?
It's worse when the AG agrees.
Mm-hmm. Oh, our AG is awful too. Mm-hmm. They're all bad.
It's now, again, Canada is honestly not much better, but it's so freaky to me that you guys elect your judges. Is that really a thing down there? Is that like you guys have like county judges elected and stuff like that, and sheriffs and stuff like that?
How else do you get them? Where do they grow?
Where do they grow?
Where do you get the store-bought is fun? Like, what do you do? You don't elect them.
They're all appointed up here, parliamentary system, right?
Oh,
we're technically a monarchy.
That's true.
Yeah,
hopefully
not for much longer, but
that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. We do elect all of our judges, for better or for worse. Unfortunately, Texas has an abysmally low turnout when it comes to state and local elections. Mm-hmm. Truly, this last year was probably our best as far as elections, because so many people came out. So you saw far more people voting Democrat.
Yeah. Sorry, this is Ricardo Martinez, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, good. We're all hearing each other.
Yes,
I hear everybody. Hopefully you can't hear yourselves over my mic. I'm not very good with the audio.
No, you're fine.
It's very nice to meet you, sir.
Oh, don't call me sir. You're gonna make me sound real, like you're gonna make me feel like I'm my mom or my dad.
Fair enough. I like you already.
Thanks for having me. I've never been on Twitch. I've never done this gamer thing, and I'm like super excited, and I'm meeting so many cool people, and I'm learning new terminology. I'm not gonna act my age anymore. It's gonna be great.
See, on Twitch, you can be whatever age you want. Nobody can see you behind the username, so you can just, I'm 36, but also I like D&D and fuzzy slippers, and I'm wearing my full body jammies today.
Right on.
I'm whatever age I want to be. So it's really nice to have you here.
Thank you.
I have to be perfectly honest with you. I don't quite understand what your organization is. Can you explain it to me like I'm 5?
Yeah. Right. I mean, I'll try to simplify it as much as I can. So we are Equality Texas, and we're the largest statewide organization in Texas that is focused on full lived equality for LGBTQ people. So we engage, we educate, and we mobilize people to show up in moments when they are needed, right? So for instance, last year, we had about 76 anti-LGBTQ bills that were filed in Texas, which is the most bills filed in any state in 1 year ever in history. And just to give you just a comparison, in 2019, we only had 15 bills filed. So in a coalition between Equality Texas, the Transgender Education Network of Texas, ACLU of Texas, Lambda Legal, HRC Human Rights Campaign, and the Texas Freedom Network, we all put up a big fight. And for regular session and 3 special sessions, we fought off 75 of the 76 bills. And that's what we do. We mobilize people. We give them the tools that they need to like feel empowered in their own individual power to do whatever it is that they can do in that moment to champion LGBTQ equality in Texas. And that can be like doing something like this, or sending a petition, signing a petition, calling your legislator, sending a text, showing up to the Capitol to tell your story, share testimony, dropping a card, which is the official position once bills are being heard. It's just a lot.
That's awesome. So we had a question, and because you're more focused on the legal side, and we had this question right before you got here. What is the legality of this law in Texas? Is it a law? Is it just an official opinion? Is it enforceable? Is it even freaking legal?
Yeah. So the Attorney General's opinion is just that, an opinion. It has no power of law behind it. It's just an interpretation of law that doesn't necessarily change anything in Texas, right? But I think the worry for us is just the practical application, right? So people are ingesting this information from people in positions of power who are saying, hey, this is my opinion, and people are going to be confused by whether or not it's a law or not, right? And do we have to comply or not? And the truth is that Ken Paxton, our Attorney General, and the governor do not have power to unilaterally create or change law. And so a lot of what we're doing now with our community partners is just educating folks about the fact that that is factual. This is not a law. But that doesn't take away from the actual harm that it's causing communities across Texas.
See, that was the question I was just about to ask, because clearly trans, openly, visibly trans. I live in Indiana. We have our own special slew of anti-LGBTQI plus bigotry. We did conversion therapy. I think we were like one of the last places to ban it. But is there a good reason? Like, I don't want to ask if there's a good reason we should be scared, but is there a good reason we should be wary about this, or are we kind of panicking over something, making a mountain out of a molehill thing? That's what I was trying to say.
It's hard, right? Because obviously there's reason to worry when the conversation is around people's humanity, right? Even if we're not changing laws, even if we are, even if there's recourse, you still have to live it. And so for folks who may misinterpret the guidance from the governor, let's say a social worker or a teacher who's not affirming of trans kids in school, or an administrator, they might be led to believe that because they're mandatory, they have to report, they're mandated to report, that they have to report this. And that would trigger an investigation from the Department of Family and Protective Services. And that is traumatic, right? Even if the case is dismissed, it has to be opened. And that's traumatizing for a kid. That's traumatizing for loving parents. And we already have issues with the Department of Family and Protective Services here in Texas. There are kids that are sleeping in offices, in government offices, because they cannot find placements. They have folks who are not making a living wage. People that have unmanageable caseloads, right? So there are already issues, and you're fabricating something to create even more work for people that are really overworked. So is there reason to worry? Yes. Does that mean that we lose hope? Absolutely not. There are thousands of people across Texas who are committed to the full lived equality of LGBTQ people. And what I want folks who are watching, if there's one thing that you take away, like, we're not going to quit doing what we do. Like, I have never met more courageous people that stand in the face of adversity than here in Texas, ever. And I'm talking about people who just like go all out, right? And you have those folks who are just anarchists that just want to burn shit down. And then you have some folks who are just strategically working behind the scenes. It runs the gamut of the type of advocates who are here, and you need all of them. And there's a place for every single one of them.
I absolutely believe in diversity of tactics. Sorry, my stimulant is wearing off, ADHD, and like I don't have much control of my mouth when I get tired. But I'm really very interested in learning what people from out of state can do that isn't like donating, because some people just don't have the money, especially right now in the pandemic. What are some of the things people can actually do that are actually helpful?
That's a good question. Number one, I would say if you're unfamiliar with how we got here, and this is like the first that you're hearing about this, or feeling the urgency behind supporting transgender people, I would go back and try to catch up with like information, right? Because we've been at this for a couple of years here in Texas, kind of trying to ring the alarm about what's happening here. And luckily, we're at this inflection point where everyone's paying attention, right? Which is amazing, because then we can capitalize on the momentum of folks paying attention. But now we have to make a commitment to actually get the knowledge necessary to be able to really understand the issues a little bit better. So I would say read up on all of the issues. Almost every state has an equality organization that are probably fighting actual bills right now. So if you're in Arkansas, if you are in Tennessee, if you are in Alabama, if you're in Arizona, there are bills that people need to fight right now. Right, these bills that have that are a danger because they can become law. Right, I think you were mentioning Florida just passing their "Don't Say Gay" bill today. There are other states who are fighting the good fight right now. So I would suggest that they plug in directly to their state equality organization. If you want to support Texas specifically, I would say our Instagram has a link tree. So if you go and you follow us on Instagram, and the link tree, which is the link on our bio, that once you click it, takes you to a whole bunch of different ways that you can get engaged. You can send a letter, an email directly to the commissioner of the Department of Family and Protective Services, and letting her know that you're watching, right? That you are disappointed in their actions for partaking in these political games and using trans kids as pawns and putting family through trauma.
I don't want to take up all the time because I'd really love for you and Natalie to talk. But
Natalie,
Hi.
how you doing?
I'm good. I am actually the board president of a Houston-based organization called Montrose Grace Place, and we serve as a bi-weekly drop-in center for home insecure youth ages 13 to 24, and we focus on being a safe space for LGBTQ plus kids. And not only do the majority of our youth fall into that community, but they are also 90% Black and Brown. And so in light of this, we were talking earlier just about how initially rage-inducing it is, especially coming on the last Drudges of Black History Month, because it makes me reflect on the fact that the majority of trans people that are killed happen to be Black trans women. Montrose Grace Place itself, we lost 2 of our trans youth, both of which were Black women, in the span of just a year. And so seeing things like this, as you were talking about, like, we should be afraid because it can inform the opinions of people who are maybe not intentionally hateful, but just lacking in knowledge and education, which is what leads up to hate. And so, we are too pushing forward with just with experiencing the freeze and Hurricane Harvey and the pandemic. We are using this as even more of a push to be more active, to seek out more opportunities to tell our story and the stories of our youth, to potentially get more funding to help fund our trans-specific fund, which helps trans kids with medical needs and things like that. So as a potential partner for Equality Texas, what can you do for organizations like us? Like, what kind of resources do you have or can you present for us to continue to do our mission and push that forward?
That's a great question. So we're not a direct service organization, right? But we are fully committed to leveraging our resources to help local organizations, regional organizations, small organizations across Texas to thrive, just because the more organizations like yours, the more organizations that provide direct services to our constituents, the stronger our community is, the stronger our state is, and the more we can develop actually landscapes where change is possible and then sustainable over time, right? So one of the things that we did last year as a result of what we experienced with the pandemic is we launched our Queer Texas Crisis Fund. And that was a fund that funneled essentially money that we collected using our platform to then push out to 16 different organizations across Texas. Every single year, we kind of strive to do similar things like that to help organizations, but we also provide like training, skill-based training. We provide I don't know if you're on our list, and if you're not, you should get on it, but every 2 weeks, our partners receive an email about everything that's happening in Texas here politically, because I think it informs the work that we do on the ground and how we're able to service or not service our communities, right? So I think that it really depends on the work that we do. And I would love to have just a brainstorming session with you about what it is that you need right now and how we're able to help you fill in those gaps.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I've definitely familiar with Equality Texas. I've only been a board member since last June, July. So I'm still very much kind of getting my feet wet as far as like relationships with partners or building new relationships with partners. So very much am familiar with your work and know what you're doing for Houston and Texas more at large. So thanks so much.
Yeah, you bet. And thank you for the work that you do, because you work directly with folks that are experiencing a tremendous amount of trauma. So your proximity to that trauma, it just takes a lot of you to give yourself and then hold space for folks who are going through probably a lot of crisis situations that are not easy to kind of bear.
Yeah, it's been an interesting experience. I was just telling Sam and Jay that I started off as a volunteer 8 years ago with MGP, and then went into being a mentor to our youth, and then went into serving the board, and then eventually becoming board president. So it's been interesting to see the evolution of our social climate through that, as well as just my own role and who I'm engaging with and how, and the things that I'm learning, not just as a queer person in the community, but also someone who is leading the organization. And so I know how important it is to find good partners like Equality Texas to work with. And we were just speaking about the importance of recognizing not just large organizations, but grassroots and community activists organizations who are doing more of that kind of face-to-face community-based work.
Oh,
and so that's really like where my heart lies. But I know also it's because of organizations like Equality Texas and HRC and others that are kind of even further amplifying the big picture, so to speak, and then sharing all of the smaller organizations that are doing more of the community-based work.
Yeah, and I think that there's a natural connection between like community-led organizations and organizations like ours, right? Because in collaboration, we can come up with policy that actually would move the needle on some of the things that we're experiencing on the ground and alleviate some of the problems and the issues that really need fixing, right? The critical things that we may not know. Like, we're championing non-discrimination protections. We are championing enumerated anti-bullying policies. We're championing a lot of really great stuff, but we can also, identify other lawmakers who would introduce bills that would tackle some of the things that we're seeing on the ground. I would love to do that.
Ricardo, I would like to give you the same opportunity that I gave Natalie a little earlier of, is there anything that you would specifically would like to, what I asked was, is there something specific that you would like to correct in the mind of the greater population about all of this? Like one thing that you would really like to everyone to know and correct in their brains, if I'm making any sense.
Yeah, there's so much. Let me just try to narrow.
That was Natalie's answer too.
I was like, oh gosh, where do I start? Let me get out my list of misconceptions about the population of homeless LGBTQ kids.
I guess, I go back to this, like, I grew up with a really religious family, right? And I have a very unique experience and maybe that my family didn't have to wrestle with the idea of loving their LGBTQ identified kids and still practicing whatever religion they believe in, right? And I believe that the one thing that I wish could that everyone understood profoundly is that your divinity is not in question. Your humanity is not in question just because of how you identify or who you are. Right? I wish people really understood that profoundly and understood that everyone has inherent worth and value. And I think if we had that recognition, it would be easier to have conversations. It would be easier to like understand each other from a human level, empathize, have compassion, have grace.
And a little bit of humility too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we operate out of a Lutheran church. We're a secular organization, but Kindred Montrose, which is a very, very affirming church in the heart of the Montrose area, which is colloquially called the neighborhood of Houston. It has a lot of historical, just gay background, gay culture there. But the pastor there often talks about the divinity of trans people, the divinity of queer people and of gay people, of the entire spectrum. And I think you're absolutely right. Like reframing, not seeing people like that as others, but seeing them as just a part of the spectrum of humanity or divinity. If you use that kind of terminology, like I think when you face people with the fact and the knowledge of like these are people and these are people not going through this kind of like hypothetical the act of transitioning is often just kind of like something that a lot of people don't understand, so they kind of make up in their minds what that means. But if you really humanize it and tell people like this is the experience of a trans person, an actual trans person in Houston, this is the narrative we tell of 2 Black trans women that we lost. Here's the people that they were before that. Here's how we joked around with each other when they were alive, the games that we played together, what we enjoyed together, like making those stories human and like confronting people with that. They are human, that their humanity is just so important. It really is.
And it honors their legacy, right? Because their passing, their death was it was a blip in a very sometimes long life, right? And they had so much joy in that time. They had so many experiences. They were somebody's sibling. They were somebody's friend. They were somebody's partner. And there was a long life before that moment. And I think you're right. Kind of turning it around and just celebrating their legacy as people and what brought them joy is important.
Yeah, and there's like a kind of like a colloquialism in Black culture that's like giving somebody their flowers, and I really embrace the idea of like giving people their flowers before they're dead. Like, celebrating them when they're here, humanizing them before they become a victim or the target of something terrible. Like, I really embrace the idea of if we give people their flowers when they're alive and when they're here, we will not have to give them to them when they unfortunately have passed away at the hands of hate or because of a self-loathing or fear that got so difficult that they took their own life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of telling people that I love them all of the time, right? At random moments, because I think it's just nice, right? It interrupts everything else in the day. Like I'll text my mom just randomly, and the response I'll get is like, "What happened?" Right? And I'm just I'm just in my feels right now, and I was thinking about you, and just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that in my friend group is absolutely standard is we all tell each other we love each other, and we mean it. We don't just say it to be friendly. We mean it. When we say we love you, we love you. Like we're basically a family because we all kind of had family issues. So, you know what I mean?
Chosen family, yeah.
Exactly. I'm going to be really honest. This whole thing, I've said it several times. I really wish I could just be angry about it and just be furious, filled with rage. But I'm terrified. I'm scared. I'm very scared. I have to admit it. I can't not be in self-preservation mode. And I'd really like to know specifically from your organization, is there like something that you can tell trans people specifically that'll kind of alleviate some of that fear? Totally asking for the community, not just me specifically. Not being selfish at all.
Yeah, there's a lot, right? Number one, I think everyone should hear that they are perfect just the way that they are, as they are in this world, right? There is absolutely, like, other people's actions do not reflect your own self-worth and value as a human being, right? It says a lot more about the people who are spewing the hate than you, right? And that may not necessarily provide people a lot of comfort, but it's important to know that their words are not important, right? All kids, regardless of race, regardless of class, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, or ability, we all deserve happy and authentic lives. And there are thousands of people across this country who are mobilizing now in this moment, in this inflection point, to create some change. Because I think we are now deciding, like, what is permissible in how we treat people, right? And I think we just hit a really a low moment here where someone decided, oh, kids, it's okay. It's okay to attack innocent kids, right? And I think you're seeing this wave of pushback because the majority of Americans believe that discrimination against LGBTQ people is wrong. And 70% of Texans believe that discrimination against LGBTQ people is wrong. And so the strategy of our opponents is to erode that 70%, right? To get people on their side because they understand just the change that we've made. And if you look back in history, what we're experiencing now is very similar to the playbook from the late 70s and the late 80s. This is cyclical. It comes back. It's always about saving somebody. It's always about protecting something. And when you look at the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, the 80s, after the AIDS epidemic or during the AIDS epidemic, a lot of legislation similar to that was introduced across the entire country. And then we spent years undoing it. And now we're back. So I think this takes a steadfast commitment from people to push back. And I know that it's hard and I know that it's traumatic, but I think we have to commit to doing whatever it is that we can safely do or have the capacity to do to create change. And anything is good enough, right? Because we have to understand that, like, we're still navigating this pandemic. We are still coming out of a bad 2021 legislative year. We are still coming off of traumas from communities that have been severely marginalized and living on the margins for decades. And at the same time that we are unpacking this stuff, we're also fighting. And so I would say to be gentle with yourself, practice a lot of forgiveness, put yourself first. And if you need a break from the fight, take a break. And we got you.
Yeah. Don't make me cry on stream pretty much.
We had a long conversation about giving yourself grace when you are a person that exists within kind of the maelstrom of what's going on. And I experienced something similar behind like all of the protests around the death of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and others. And I really had to like just realize and tell myself, you know, it's not okay to fight every single day or at every single moment because I am Black and I am living this constantly. And so I share that with Sam and I share that with some of my trans friends, like just if you need the time and if you need the space, like take it. It's okay to just be sad and, you know, pillow cry and, eat whatever. Like, be kind to yourself and forgive yourself for not always being on, because it's hard, and it's even harder because we're in the middle of a global pandemic.
Yeah, and it shouldn't just be a trans, non-binary, and gender expansive people's job to move the needle, right? We need everyone to turn out. Like, this cannot rest on the shoulders of just a very small group of people. Like, everyone needs to turn out.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
need to hear it. We need to see it. There's so many ways to plug in.
And I think when you see other organizations and other people doing that work, it can kind of help alleviate that sense of like stress on your shoulders, because you know that people are out there who have a lot more of like maybe the resources or the experiences, whether it's on the legal front or just getting stuff done and having the right connections. Like, that they're getting some stuff done, and you can feel a little bit less guilty about not being able to affect tangible change in a way that is impossible for the average person.
Yeah, what I tell people is, like, if you think of yourself as a glass of water, right, and you are completely depleted, you can't really be of service to something bigger than yourself, right? Because you yourself are running on empty. And so I forget who, I think it might have been Iyanla Van Sant who talked about like what's in the cup is yours, what runneth over is everybody else's, right? And that's true. You got to keep your cup full.
It can be seriously hard sometimes, but yes, also
really hard, because this is passion work. This is our lives, right? Our lives often depend on this work.
I wish it didn't have to be life and death all of the time.
Yeah, 100%.
So I've kind of run myself out of questions talking to Natalie, because it was just really good conversation. But is there anything about your organization that you'd like to talk about right now? Because I'm still really curious about what you're doing on the ground, basically.
Well, number one, we are hiring a lot of folks. If folks would like to go and apply, like, we're hiring probably 4 or 5 people. We're in the process of hiring communications director, digital communication associate, probably like 5 field folks across Texas. So one of the things that we're doing this year that we're focused on is really going all in to our biggest commitment to mobilize on the grassroots level and talk to voters, right, to really try to influence elections in key specific areas throughout Texas, and then build in some areas where we can make ground to, in the next 4, 6, 8 years, be able to win some elections in places where maybe people don't necessarily think that we can at the moment, right? So it's about getting out in the grassroots, talking to people, talking about issues, getting them registered to vote, mobilizing them, reminding them to turn out to vote. I mean, even before I hopped on here, today's the last day of early voting in Texas. I ran myself over to the public library just to vote, and came back just in time.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm very tired. This whole thing has been just hellacious. But I'm really, really glad that organizations like yours exist. They really do give me hope, because like I said, I can't be angry right now. I'm in self-preservation mode. And like, I don't know if that's overreacting. I don't know if it's underreacting. At this point, all I can do is just focus on getting through the terror. So having people like y'all out there who can and will do the work really helps. It really helps. That sometimes I feel like I'm screaming into the void, because I'm in Indiana, in the ruralest part of rural, like nowhere's unknown cousin. It's not great here for me specifically. It's not great here. And sometimes I know I'm not, but sometimes I feel like I'm the only trans person in the whole world. Like, I know that sounds silly, but it feels like that sometimes. And I have trans friends. So like, but knowing that people are out there, specifically cis and straight people are out there doing the thing, not just talking about it, it makes me feel a lot better. Like, not perfect, but a lot better. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate you both.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And I will say this, a lot of what anchors my passion for this work revolves around trans folks that I met when I was really young in high school. And then after high school, and probably my first professional job ever. And my friend Kiwi was the kindest human being ever in life in New York City to me, and was one of the few people that probably saw me, like actually saw me fully. Um, and I think a lot of it has to do, a lot of my work, a lot of when I'm tired, I go back and I take a look at the folks that uplifted me when I was younger and influenced like who I am now. And those are the folks that give me the drive to continue to push on.
Well, I can tell you one thing. Your organization is, it's very impressive because I think most of the streamers that I either know or mod for are focusing on your organization specifically. I think you have a Tiltify? Do you have a Tiltify?
We're running it right now.
Oh, I'm smart. I know things. It's fine.
It's fine.
Professional moderator moderating professionally.
Yeah. I'm learning this as I go along. This is like completely new to me, but this community has welcomed us, and we are forever grateful. You have no idea. But to the points that we were talking about before, I would welcome folks to take a look at where other small organizations are doing work, like the Resource Center, Montrose Center, small organizations like Saga, Algo, organizations all across Texas that are doing this work. Borderland Rainbow Center. There's so many good ones. FIA Center. There's just like Tent. There's just so many.
Yeah, I was going to mention Tent a little earlier. Yeah.
Natalie, did you want to say something?
Oh no, I was just saying the Montrose Center is a neighbor of ours, so they often collaborate with us. They're awesome. I forgot to shout them out earlier, so yeah, echo the Montrose Center.
Also, PFLAG. PFLAG has been great. All of the last 2.5 years and our partnership with them, they've been incredible at mobilizing people, mobilizing parents. And then young people, just a shout out to all the young people who are pushing back about these book bans all across Texas. Incredibly inspiring. I'm watching. You may think that you're screaming into a void, but we're watching.
Part of my self-care today was buying the book Mouse.
No.
Oh God, I don't even want to think about that whole thing.
I know that's a whole other 2-hour conversation about the book ban.
Oh my
Another
God.
time.
But it's another symptom, right, of the same exact sickness.
Yep.
A lot of intersectionality going on with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is why intersectionality is important, folks. I've kind of lost most of my train of thought, but up here in Indiana, we had the religious bill a couple of years ago, back before Pence was Pence, if that makes sense. But like, I'm always very confused by these laws and how they get passed and how they're legal, and specifically the Don't Say Gay law. How is that legal? I apologize, but I'm genuinely asking, how was that legal to do?
Well, it's legal because people voted, people in positions of power voted that bill out, right? It becomes legal because there are representatives, senators in Florida, in states like Florida, who have said, yes, we want this bill, right? So anyone can write a bill, draft a bill, introduce a bill. But then it's about all of the steps that it takes to get to become law. And if you have a majority of folks who are anti-LGBTQ, that bill's going to fly out of committee, of a hearing, of a chamber. So it's our job as folks, everyday folks who have the right, who can vote, to vote people who really are truly committed to representing all of their constituents, not just some of them. And who are courageous, politically courageous, right? In moments like this.
My biggest worry, honestly, is what I told Natalie earlier. It's very much like the disinformation around COVID. It was started by certain people, but they're not in charge anymore. It became its own monster. And now, like, no one's in charge of the anti-vax movement. It's just out there. And that's what I'm afraid of with these bills. Not so much that more laws will get passed, though that does scare me, but that this is going to kind of create its own monster, which it already exists. It absolutely already exists. Anybody who's heard the words gender critical knows it already exists. But I'm talking like at the state level. I don't know if you've heard about Marjorie Taylor Greene in the last few days. She was literally advocating for violence against trans people. Quite literally. Like, her exact words were, "We beat them into the ground. That's how we handle situations like this." So, like, I'm always... I am surprised that I am always eternally shocked by the things that you can get away with when it comes to the law. You grow up with this idea that the law is ironclad and just, and it wouldn't be a law if it didn't mean something. Welcome to grown-ups. I'm just rambling now, so either of you feel free to jump in. I have been running on just terror and hope in alternating modes for like 3 days now, so brain mush. Feel free to talk.
I mean, I just want to say that I think, regardless of how tough it gets, I still have hope that we can create change, right? You can't do this work without hope and commitment to kind of the long game. And it could be rectified. People will just need to want to kind of galvanize around putting a stop to it. And I think we're getting close.
And I think, too, there is so much wrapped up in lawmaking that is about self-service, that's about lobbying, that's about making money, especially in Texas. I mean, we're still seeing news about what happened with ERCOT and our freeze and just our power grid and all that stuff, which is connected to what's going on right now with Greg Abbott and this whole thing. So much of the law has been taken away from what should be considered objectively just to be for the self-service of a few or small groups or individuals. And I think that really gets people down in regard to holding on to that idea that there is justice in the world and there is a sense of good, and our law should always be about that. And it sounds kind of negative to say, well, remember that lawmaking is also a lot about just people trying to make money and do bad things for the coins in their pocket. But it helps me sometimes, because then I can then think, well, people are becoming more knowledgeable about politics and how politics happens. And they're realizing that, that's why we lost power. That's why this initiative is trying to be introduced. It's all about self-service, and we're going to reject that. Texas was so close to getting a Democratic governor, which has never happened, has not happened in a very long time. I can't even remember, but that alone showed progress. The fact that the margin between Abbott and Beto O'Rourke was so very small, and so I think people are becoming more knowledgeable about the political process and where it has been tainted, and are voting against that, are voting in people who won't be just about self-service and lobbying for the sake of their own pockets. So I do find hope in that.
One of the small things I I have in my brain about this, and it could just be me being optimistic, but whenever you see something, anything in general, but especially systems that start to fall apart and die, you notice that they start to get louder and louder and louder about things that they're railing against. And I think, again, this is me being probably very optimistic, but I think we're seeing the whole conservatism and neoliberalism movement just kind of dying slowly as everything they're doing just kind of stretches out too far for them all to handle. And one of the reasons we're seeing so many just blatantly ridiculous things happening is because they're like, well, we got nothing left to lose now. Let's just go ahead and do it. And that's also why I think they're being defeated over and over again, because there's just too much opposition to that in the base of regular people. The people who don't have to worry about this sort of stuff all the time, to put a finer point on it, right? Just those people are more and more and more of the people who are unaffected by this exact type of fight are hearing stuff like this and going, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. That kind of isn't good. And then that's when you start losing that sort of fight, and that's why they keep getting loud. Hopefully.
I mean, I don't think that you're wrong. I think a lot of people share your insight in thinking that this is kind of a last-ditch effort to keep hope. I mean, keep power, right? To grab onto power and keep it. And I do believe that when people get involved and you're doing it for the right reasons, you can really influence politics in Texas and change politics in Texas or anywhere. People just need to get involved. And I'm glad as well that people are kind of waking up to like how the system works.
I really appreciate you coming here today, Ricardo. I generally consider myself an absolute nobody. I don't know how I'm here talking to you two who are like actual damn professionals. So I'm really proud to be here, and I'm really glad that you guys exist, basically. I just want to thank you for existing and doing what you do.
Same.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank y'all for having this platform and deciding to, you could have been playing something fun right now, but here we are talking about like good things to talk about, but it's not the usual Twitch fare. So thank you for doing this. It's really wonderful.
Well, and thank you, Jay, for allowing us to use your platform.
Yeah. No, like I said, Natalie was on the nose. I would probably be playing something dumb right now. It wouldn't matter. It doesn't help anybody. So, yeah, I'm pleased to do this. And incidentally, Natalie, later on, if you want to stay in contact with me, we can figure out like something to do for your organization as well. I'd love to.
Yeah, for sure. I would love that.
Yeah.
And again, I consider myself mostly a nobody, but I do know somebodies. So if either of you want to reach out to me, I'm pronouns in my bio across all platforms, Twitter, Twitch, everything.
Wait, how did you get that handle?
I got lucky. You
are literally at pronouns in my bio. That's impressive.
Yes. So on Twitter, it used to be Plot Device Manager. That's my email address. I just really love that name. But of course, I was running into a lot of transphobes and pronouns in bio, opinion discarded. And it just, like, that phrase got stuck in my head, and I was like, can I make that my username? So I just went on there. It's like, somebody's going to have taken. It worked. So my favorite thing in the world to do is when I see any of my friends arguing with gender critical people of any sort on the timeline, as soon as they say something about pronouns in bio, I love to jump in to the conversation. Yes, it is I. Pronouns in my bio. The glorious. Oh, you're just a transphobe. Mm-hmm. But yes, I am pronouns in my bio across all platforms. If you ever want to like discuss charity things, please reach out to me. I know a lot of people who do wonderful charities. You are always welcome to DM me anytime. So,
awesome. And to further toot Sam's horn here, I've known Sam for maybe 2 months, and they've been probably one of the best people I've ever worked with professionally speaking on this channel. Like they've got Sam's got everything down, everything. I was running this rinky-dink operation for 8 years. Sam comes in for like 5 minutes and goes, hey, could you add this and this and this and this, and I think this will streamline this and this and this, and done. Good, perfect. If you guys need someone online stuff, Sam's your boy.
How dare you make me blush, sir?
It's like half of my job.
It is a job I'm very passionate about. I do love modding. I love helping produce charity streams. I did not grow up safe. I did not grow up comfortable. And I like to make places safe and comfortable for other people, because I'm kind of giving that to the child in my head who never got to have that. So making safe places for people is kind of a passion of mine.
I love it.
So
Cool.
I don't want to keep either of you longer than you can be
yeah.
here. So if there's anything that you wanted specifically to say to the audience, to anybody, now is the time, and you can stay as long as you want, but you are not obligated.
Just thank you, everybody, for thinking of us, for supporting us, for having our backs. It really does mean a lot to us. We have been fighting real hard with a really small staff for quite a long time. And this is just one of those things that's just so heartwarming. It's a good reminder about the good in the world. And I can't thank you enough. And now I got to go.
Okay.
It's wonderful to have you. Thank you so much.
Just be in touch.
Yes, nice to meet you. I'll definitely reach out to you.
All right. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
That was Ricardo Martinez, CEO of Equality Texas, everybody.
Fantastic.
That's
How am I talking to a CEO?
I was just like, oh my, because I've known about Equality Texas forever. And then you were just like casually like, oh, we're going to bring up the CEO of Equality Texas. And I'm like, oh, okay. And inside I'm just like,
I don't know how this stuff happens. I just reach out and people say things to me. I'm like, I don't know if you were watching the D&D podcast I did just before this. You were probably at work. But essentially the way that happened was I was like, I think I'd like to do something else with my channel. I've been doing this for 8 years. I'd rather do something. I'm going to reach out to random people I think are cool, and I will play D&D with them. And like Zoe B said yes. And Thoughtsline said yes. And I was like, holy crap. Those people are awesome.
The fact that Mildred is on that D&D campaign, one, is amazing, and two, I'm so glad because they are funny as hell. Oh my god, they're funny.
Right, but like these are people that are also like, because they're at the, and it's no bones to my friend Wild Jinx and my buddy Megaron, who are also on the stream with me as well, and obviously Star. Oh wow. Star, but like Star, Mildred, and Zoe are at such a size that generally their communications to like random people are just cut off entirely. And I just like, hey, you want to play D&D? And they're like, yeah, I do. And I was like, oh.
Yep. Mm-hmm. The nerd walking into the cool kids table. Y'all want to play D&D?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
Dude, sit down. You have to DM.
Can we talk about like fun nerdy things?
Would you like to? Yes, of course.
Oh my god, yeah.
Because when Courtney told me about like your stream and stuff like that, and I was looking and I was like, oh, they play D&D. How cool. So I have only played D&D once.
Really?
In my life. And it was literally last fall. I'll say fall because time is a weird thing and I can't remember when things happened. But my partner and I went to upstate New York and stayed with a friend of ours. And I'm into Critical Role. I enjoyed like the Adventure Zone, and I'm about to get like into Dimension 20. I didn't grow up on D&D. I told this story in a group of people one time, which was funny. I was like the only Black person in this group of mostly white people talking about their D&D experiences. And I was like, D&D was not culturally accessible to me. Like I didn't know anybody that played D&D. I just knew it as this like thing that white nerdy men did. Didn't know anything. I knew it was some dice. I saw like the jokes, like on The Simpsons and stuff. I just didn't understand it. And I didn't even really understand it until much later on in life, and I started watching Critical Role and getting into that and stuff like that. And so I lessened the terror in my heart and soul by making myself entirely too busy. Like my partner is always like, "You're too busy. You do too much." And I'm like, "There's no such thing. I know people way busier than me." Like,
I know someone just like that.
And so I stay busy so I don't think about the dark things out there. But beyond that, I never had the opportunity. I never really had a group of friends that I could play with or anything. So we played a one shot with a friend of ours. It was just my partner and I, and our friend DMing for me. And it was like the most fun thing ever. Like, it's awesome. Absolutely amazing. I had already like a character concept in my head. Like I years before, I was like, if I ever play D&D, this is the type of character I want to play. And so
I love to hear that.
I got to play him, and it was just so much fun. It was so cool. So like sometimes in the dark times of the night, I'm like, I'll play D&D one day again. I promise.
Let me tell you, I am so deep in the D&D one-shot thing. If you want to play, let me know. I will find a place for you to play. Like on or off stream. Like D&D is sort of the thing that brought the community I am in together. It was a little bit of other stuff too, a lot of neurodivergence, but D&D was sort of the focus at the onset. And like, I didn't play a lot of D&D. I had that very stereotypical experience of being the one girl at the table with a bunch of dudes. It got gross pretty fast. And I enjoyed the gameplay, but I didn't enjoy the group. So I kind of thought to myself that was all D&D was. And then I started watching other people play D&D on live plays. And I realized it could be anything that you want. You just got to find the right people to play with. Once I started finding the right people, I sign up for everything now. I sign up for everything. I usually don't get picked, but I sign up for everything.
Right.
I just want to play more D&D. I want to have fun with friends.
Yeah. Right. So Jay, are you a player? Do you DM both?
I am a forever DM. Yeah, but it's not that I don't play. It's just once my horrible neurodivergency addled brain is so needing to have all of the information streams pulled into it, right? Like I need that constant I have charts and images and I'm connecting threads while things are, I don't know if I could be just a player anymore. I don't I can't, like, I'm playing 100 NPCs at once, come at me, like, but the biggest thing about not just D&D either, incidentally, I would love to try other systems out. Cyberpunk, The Witcher RPG has some wonderful representation, incidentally, the D&D, The Witcher RPG, or things like Olivia Hill makes a TTRPG about like hunting monsters in the gig economy. I forget what it's called now for the life of me, but it's apparently very good and I want to try it out. But it's the idea, and it's kind of what we've been talking about here all day, it's sharing our stories. At the very core of who we are as people, how we connect to each other, how we can empathize with each other, it's sharing our stories. They don't have to be real, they just have to be emotional. And that's oh man, I get such a kick out of it every time, especially bringing in new people. I love it. I like baby's first RP. I love it.
And like, if you as the DM, you absolutely have to notice that even when it's not real, when it really gets emotional and it really, like, they're really into it, it is kind of real because they're putting themselves into it. You can't get that emotional and not put yourself into it. Mm-hmm. So it kind of provides this really safe catharsis to experience a lot of things: joy, pain, anger, sadness, in a safe way. And I love that about D&D. I love that about D&D. Not only do I get to play whatever gender I want to play, but like it's cathartic in a way. Some people just want to go and kill monsters. Cool. Let's fight. Let's kill monsters. Some people want to role play. You know what I mean? They want to get in political machinations and stuff like that. Everybody engages with D&D a little differently. And when you get that coalescence of a group where all of their like niche parts of that they like kind of fit together, it's magic. It's like you found your family when you're playing with the right people. I love that about D&D.
Yeah, I love the narrative aspect of it. Like I could, the system of like battle and stuff is really interesting. I love the system of like more so making decisions or kind of consequences and things like that, and how it affects the story, especially with how the DM interprets it. I love the storytelling aspect of it, which is why like I'm sad that I haven't had many opportunities to play at D&D, but I also just enjoy watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love watching other people play it. I wish I had even more time for that, but I do enjoy it. But the stories, and again, like you said, getting into whatever kind of narrative that you want is really fun. Like I had a great time doing it with my partner, who I've RP'd with like for the past 10 years. Like I have an RP background, I have a writing and art background. So like I love narrative. I love storytelling. Like that's where I like get really invested in it. So I love the idea of like coming up with a character, and we had like a pre-established background and all this stuff. And like, again, you talked about like exploring whatever kind of gender that you want. I apparently this is like a trope or it
is a very common experience.
So I played a bard, and apparently that says something about me. Like, oh, your first character was a bard, and I was like, I don't know what the joke is, but I did. But I don't know what kind of person that makes me. But my very first D&D character, my only D&D character, was a bard of whispers, because I'm also a goth. So I was really into that.
I love the College of Whispers.
I remember I described him in this group of people when I was talking. They were talking about like what kind of characters they all played and rolled, and I was like, well, if I ever play a character, he's pretty much going to be like goth Beyonce. Like
yes,
like Slayonce is what I
love this.
So I made this bard character who's a bard of whispers, and he has like this violin that he plays, and it also turns into like his sword and like a little snake that he keeps. And I don't know why, but one day I was like, oh, J-Dubs is trans man. Yeah, that sounds right. And then I just went on my day. Like it just made sense. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then so, that was it. Like I didn't dwell on it or anything, or I didn't like incorporate it, so to speak, like into his story or what. But it was just like bringing that kind of diversity into a fantasy world was really important to me, and has always been important to me. Like diverse. I don't want to be on here for another 2 hours, but like diverse storytelling and bringing diversity into storytelling is like my soapboxes are stacked. Like that's the one that I stand atop at all times. Is about diversity in storytelling.
If you don't mind a suggestion for a black-led, black-casted life play, I highly suggest Into the Motherlands and Black Dice Society. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
I've heard of the first one.
Into the Motherlands?
Watched it. Yeah, I've heard of Into the Motherlands, but hadn't watched it yet. I was asking for some recommendations a long time ago, and that was on my list. And again, it's like, when is the time? But I did say that I was going to start looking at more like diverse, if not black-led or majority black D&D groups.
And Jay, I don't know if you can correct me or not, but I'm pretty sure Into the Motherlands and Black Dice Society is an all-black cast. Yes?
I believe they both are, yeah. To be fair, I haven't checked out Black Dice Society in a little while, but I'm pretty sure Into the Motherlands is, because the people who are playing it wrote Into the Motherlands in general as a system and a setting.
Yeah, a long time ago, I kickstarted a game system called the I'm going to mispronounce it. I think it's the Ouagadougou Chronicles, but it's a Black-led, mostly Black written system that's all about African mythologies and based on like West African aesthetics and places and things. And I just got a message that like they're doing this kind of like digital aspect with it. I think it's kind of like a game, or maybe it's more so like a digital map, so to speak, of where you can kind of construct your narratives for your games. But it looks beautiful, and I'm like, I might not ever play this, but I'm just so glad that I was able to give some money towards it. I am so sorry. I have to run. My partner just popped her head in and was like, "It's 8:00. What are we doing for dinner?" So I should go feed her.
That's quite fine. I should probably, at this point, I've been streaming for a while myself. I should probably break and eat.
And I have to go, unfortunately.
Right. Thank you, both of you. Seriously, it was great to hand my channel over to people who knew what they were talking about and were directly affected by everything that was going on. So it wasn't just some other Twitch talking head saying things that, like, sure might be real, but I didn't want that. I wanted you two here, and I want to thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, this, again, so appreciate it.
I really specifically want to thank you, not only for the work you do, which is very encouraging to me because I was a very disaffected youth, homeless, gay, the whole gambit of suck. The only thing that probably saved me was that I'm white. So I really appreciate the work you do. And I'm serious. If you ever want to do like some charity fundraising for your organization, please let me know if you would like to. I know so many people that would love to help support you because you're a boots on the ground organization. And that's what I focus on. I don't really like overarching big companies. Like Equality Texas is doing good work, but I really would rather donate to like local in the mix organizations. So if you'd ever like to do that, please reach out to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Our board, as I shared, we just met. We're talking about like what kind of new initiatives we want to do. We're going to have like a whole tech plan with everything from how do we upgrade our website to what are some new things we want to do centric around social media or fundraising and things like that. I've watched and participated in a lot of charity streams. Games Done Quick is like one of my favorite things to watch every single year. So I'm super open to the idea of talking about how we could utilize the Twitch platform. We have a relationship with Houston Gamers, which is like a gay gaming group. So it would be so cool to maybe see if like they would be interested in some sort of collab, or I don't know, like something. We will definitely be in touch. I'm going to @ both of you. Please excuse how professional I'm not on my personal Twitter.
I have so many professional people in the industry that follow me, and I forget. There's a meme I forget every time. It's like the dude standing there is like me shit posting my funny little shit memes, and then industry professional I forgot follows me. And it's like they like the shit post that you put out, and I'm like,
I know. My partner always makes fun of me because she's like, whenever you're doing stuff for like Grace Place or when you're like talking to people or something, you always have this like other personage on. And then you come out of your room and you're like, you go back to your little gremlin self, like your little hobbit gremlin skulking back into your bedroom, hissing at people's selves. So, but this was wonderful. Thank you both so much for having me.
Of course.
Really great. And thank you so much for your support of Equality Texas and just this whole issue in our community at large. So thanks.
And we want to get support to you specifically too. So I'm really looking forward to getting to collaborate with you.
Yeah, we'll talk to you next week about stuff.
Yes, please.
Maybe we should play D&D.
Maybe we should play D&D together.
Oh my gosh, no! Don't play D&D together.
Yes, I love this idea.
The game plays once a month. I have time.
Yes, please email me. Please.
This is totally about charity. I'm definitely not using this for selfish reasons because I want to play D&D.
it's for we can do por qué no los dos. Let's do both.
Absolutely. Okay.
Very nice to meet you, Natalie.
Yeah, so nice meeting you as well. Have a great night.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, all right, Sam, I know you have to leave too. So what I'm going to do is, why don't I once again say a heartfelt thank you. You've been such a huge help, and I want you to remember that, because sometimes you're feeling down, but when I contacted you on Wednesday or whatever it was that this hell happened, and I was like, hey, we should do something. Are you okay with me doing something? You jumped on it, and I know you were hurting. So, thank you. Right? And thanks for leading this while I sat my butt over in this corner and did what I should do and just listen.
I get a little excited sometimes and kind of take over. So I appreciate that.
I intended that entirely. Yeah. Absolutely. There's no reason why I was going to have this whole thing set up and then go, and now the Canadian from Ottawa is going to sit down here and he's going to talk to you all about how the trans people have it hard, yeah, that would not have been a particular good look. 10 years ago, Jay may have attempted such a thing and then gone, why is everyone mad at me? But yeah, exactly. I'm glad 10 years ago, Jay is dead and buried. So
agreed.
Yeah.
Same about the Sam of 10 years ago.
Oh man, we're all standing on top of the corpses of our former selves.
I need that on a t-shirt though.
Right.